those are just extended runs, basically. This guy at the controls, and he's going to throw a wide open Tez Johnson. Tez Johnson heading to the end zone. Touchdown, Oregon. 48 yards.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
They hand it to him. Touchdown! Georgia SEC champions! As every dog digs really deep.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
56-yarder, the win really not a factor. Snap and hold are good. That one is good! At the buzzer, Clemson wins the ACC.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Udo on 2nd and 5, first down and more. Udo might be gone. Race is on. Past the 40-yard line. Inside the 30. Inside the 10. And tripped up inside the 5.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
There's Mr. Contact Balance again. Look at Scattaboo go. Tripped up just inside the 20. What an unbelievable first half by Scattaboo.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Paul's not here today. Craig Smoak is here with me, so we double it up. I'm David Smoak, and this is 365 Sports. Garrett Ross and Emery Winter are today in the studio, and so we'll take you all the way up until 6 in about 20, 25 minutes. SMU. BYU football coach Kalani Sitake will join us. There's a Big 12 team playing tonight in a bowl game. A lot more comments and quotes on the transfer portal. A lot more news on the transfer portal and which teams are doing better than perhaps everybody else. And so, Craig, tonight, West Virginia and Memphis up in Frisco.
Yeah, I mean, the bowl season's starting to really get underway, and the Big 12's bowl season starts tonight with the Mountaineers, and ought to be a pretty good game. Don't know quite what to expect in any of these non-playoff bowl games in terms of who's available and who's playing and who's transferred out already and what kind of coaching changes are ongoing. Obviously, West Virginia's dealing with that heading into tonight's game, makeshift before the full-on turnover to the new regime that is the old regime but new again, and Rich Rodriguez's crew that'll be taking over. But I think one thing that we've seen over the last few days is, regardless of what your opinion was on Rich Rodriguez, the hire, that it was a home run, I think, overall for West Virginia and its fan base. Certainly a fair share of detractors and people like ourselves who aren't West Virginia people who don't have that connection. So just looking at Rich Rodriguez and going, okay, like, yeah, that's cool. That's a good hire. Bringing him back, that's interesting, much like UCF and Scott Frost. But I said this last week when we had a West Virginia fan of like, y'all don't get it. It's like, yeah, I said that. I told them, yeah, we're not West Virginia fans, so we wouldn't get it to the extent that you do. We tried to best grasp it, as well as we could, and I think by the end of the week we understood just how meaningful and personal it was for a lot of people. And so I think there's a lot of excitement around that program, and the festivities they had on Friday with his big introduction and McAfee being there and the donations that are coming in and just all of that stuff, that's really bubbling up and creating a rush of excitement in Morgantown. And tonight will not be the start of that journey. It'll be kind of a nice capper on this season, and then it'll be full-blown Rich Rod building this program back up from then on out. But I think it's fun to see one more go-round of these seniors and guys that will be departing, getting to play in those uniforms and maybe even getting a win as well. And that'd be a great send-off for either team to get a win to end the season. But I think for West Virginia, they're riding that little wave of momentum. It'd be fun to see them get a win tonight.
I tell you what, Memphis can put up some points. I watched their last game. They are fun to watch, and that game tonight will kick off at 8 o'clock It's up in Frisco at Toyota Stadium, and that is the opening of the Big 12 teams among the 9 that are in bowl games. BYU, Colorado, 2. We've discussed that before. We'll have Kalani Sitake here momentarily. After tonight's game with West Virginia, after they play tonight, the next Big 12 game is not going to be until December 26th, the day after Christmas. Then there's a slew of games. We'll be in Houston on the 30th and 31st for Baylor and LSU. More on that in a moment. And then Arizona State, of course, plays on January 1st against the winner of Texas and also Clemson. So West Virginia tonight, then there'll be other bowl games, but kind of I guess you say a bubble between the next time a Big 12 team will play, which is a week from 2 weeks from Thursday. A week from Thursday of next week. So some portal news. I don't have enough news or notes on everybody here, but a couple of notes that came down this afternoon. Baylor picked up a receiver, Kobe Prentice. He was once ranked among a top 100 recruit, went to Alabama, had some pretty good numbers. I looked at his numbers the last couple of years, 22, 23, also this year. Overall, 60 catches, 780 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Not great, but still among that room at Alabama, of course, which has unbelievable talent. This year, though, did not do much. He had 129 yards on 17, how many catches? Just a handful of catches and a touchdown. He is headed to play for Dave Aranda, Jake Spavital offense at Baylor.
Yeah, he's a guy who was a 4-star rated prospect coming out of high school in Alabama and very highly coveted prospect at that time. His stars dimmed a bit since then. A 3-star in the transfer portal when they do these re-rankings, which is always interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to see. And so take those for what you will, but still the same guy with the same level of talent by most estimations, just hasn't maybe panned out the way that he was projected to, but he'll have an opportunity to change that narrative next year. They needed help at wide receiver. He was the first of 2 commits today for them as they get to a handful in the transfer portal when it comes to additions, and they need wide receiver help in particular. It's in the slot, and he's a guy who I think will give them an instant impact and hopefully be able to flourish in this Jake Spavital offense like a lot of other receivers were able to do a year ago. I hope he can maximize those talents, and if he can, then this guy was pretty highly rated, as we mentioned, and maybe they got themselves a little bit of a steal here. But either way, they needed to address wide receiver with the guys that they'll be losing, so this is a step towards that.
You hear about some of the schools like Rhett Lashley today. We'll have a quote from him in a moment about SMU, or even what you hear from Jeff Traylor and G.J. Kinney down south at Texas State, UTSA, or schools around the country, Washington State, Jake Dickert. They're getting rated. But so are the other schools at the top who might be rating other schools, but letting others move on because they're not getting playing time. Fresno State linebacker Phoenix Jackson has committed to Baylor. Apparently it was between Baylor and Auburn. 365, Sikkim 365, .com had that earlier. Pretty disruptive player. 7 tackles behind the line of scrimmage and 4 sacks, a couple of picks, pass breakups, forced a fumble or 2, and he is headed to Baylor to play in that defense with Dave Aranda.
Yeah, they need linebacker help as well. It's another position where they're going to be losing a lot of guys. You do have a Keaton Thomas coming back, but obviously linebacker positions vary. So you've got one held down by Keaton Thomas, but you're going to be losing a guy like Matt Jones, among others. So that's another position of need, or a position group of need, and I think they hit 2 very important ones up today. So I don't know much about Phoenix Jackson outside of what you just mentioned there, but it seemed to be a prospect that they were high on and went after pretty quickly. So dig the name Phoenix. That's a cool first name.
Yep.
But yeah,
he ought to be playing for Arizona State.
Well, knowing what his options were, but yeah, he'll make the journey on over from Fresno State, and another position of need, like I said. So I don't know, with a lot of these portal guys, like, everybody's happy right now. You know what I mean? Like, every school in America is like, dude, we're killing it. And maybe there's some where they haven't got off to a good start where they don't feel that way. But, like, I don't think anybody's complained about the guys that they're bringing in. It's just so hard to tell in the chaos of people moving back and forth. You're just kind of accumulating, and it all tastes good initially. I don't know what it's going to be like on the other, you know what I mean? Like on the other end. But right now, I guess if you're picking up guys, you're feeling good about it, and so they picked up a couple today, and they came at positions where they definitely need some numbers help. So, yeah, we'll see what Phoenix Jackson's capable of doing, but he was pretty productive a year ago.
Wait for some of the quotes that I'll read from others about where we are in college football, which I know you and Paul talked about. Paul should be back with us tomorrow, how you guys talked about it on Monday. And then there's Jaheim Otis from Alabama. Like I said, yeah, Alabama might pick and choose a handful of whoever they want or the upper blue bloods, but they also have people who are leaving. Otis goes to Colorado. He was the number 1 ranked player in the portal defensively by ESPN. Max Olson made some comments about him, how disruptive he can be inside the interior line. His bio at Alabama, including for this year, powerful presence on the interior of Alabama's defensive line, battled injuries last year but back to full strength. And, of course, Alabama has a bowl game coming up against Michigan, but Otis is headed to play for Dion.
Yeah, well, when you have that many 4- and 5-star type guys, I mean, they still got to be able to play too, and there's only so many positions on the field, so it's just natural that Alabama, like everybody else in this day and age, is going to have attrition. It's just that some of theirs is going to be a bit more highly rated than a lot of other people's, and in this case, I think their loss is definitely Colorado's gain. I mean, the number 1 defensive prospect, as I mentioned there on that graphic, certainly we'll take that. 5-star coming out of high school, number 10 player in his class on the line, and played quite a bit for Alabama, so not a guy who's coming in who hasn't really seen much action, but he's played in a couple seasons worth of games and been somewhat productive. They lost a lot of guys, Colorado that is, to the portal. We know they took a big stride forward last season with Robert Livingston in that defense, and I've been curious of just what's going to look like in the post-Shedeur Sanders, post-Travis Hunter type of world in general up there in Boulder, but Dion kind of gave his affirmation that he'll be back next year, and that allows you to get the ball rolling, and I think this is a sign of the types of guys they'll be able to reel in, and so this seems like a very big pickup, both literally and figuratively, and the number 1 defensive player in the portal, and that's a great get, and there's belief in that defense and what they can do after what we saw last season, so I think of the storylines that I'm excited to see this offseason, and there are a lot of them, but how Colorado shifts without having Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter right there next to Dion, and how he builds a program without those guys, I'm very interested in, and they're off to a nice start, obviously.
All right, so then there's the Utah quarterback situation, which has been quite the drama, almost a soap opera, and I'm not using that in a negative way, but there have been times it's been exhausting, I'm sure, for even Coach Whittingham, among others, like Cam Rising, Isaac Wilson. There was the thought he was going to leave. Now he says, no, I'm staying here. Utah, man, I am. Let's run it back. So Utah will have Isaac Wilson come back for 1 more year.
Utah, man, am I?
What did I say? Oh, I am. Okay. All right.
Utah,
it wasn't
man,
that much of a reason to, correct me or anything.
Well, I mean, it's what he said.
I'm dyslexic.
it's probably a reason he said it that way as well, because it goes with being the Utah man. So want to get that right. But I should mention as well with Otis, Warren Sapp, as an assistant coach there in Colorado. I think he probably had a lot to do with bringing Otis in as well, and he seems to be doing a good job there with that defensive front, so need to give him a mention as well. But, yeah, Utah, man, am I. There was a big question mark at that quarterback position, and obviously Utah addressed that somewhat last week with Devin Dampier. But Isaac Wilson, for as much as it may seem, because you saw him a lot this year, like he's a veteran quarterback, he is very much a young quarterback. He doesn't necessarily even need to be starting as much as he was and playing as much as he was out of the gates. That was just a result of the Cam Rising injury. So he got to see a lot more of the fire than I think he or Kyle Whittingham and anybody else expected to. And it didn't go all that well overall. You definitely probably had more bad than good, but there was definitely some good there and some reasons to believe he can be a good quarterback. So I think to get him back in the fold and to have him competing and filling out that room with guys like Devin Dampier just makes Utah stronger. And now you know what you've got in him. And so if, God forbid, something happens to Dampier, and I'm sure those guys will compete, but you know what you've got in your backup quarterback there with Isaac Wilson, who you'd imagine will just naturally and should be better based on getting a lot of playing time this season. So I don't know what his offers were like out of the portal, but clearly he either loved what he heard from the new OC and Jason Beck and and what was laid out, or just maybe didn't love what he saw in the portal. But either way, I think it's a good thing for Utah and their program to get him back in the fold.
One thing you wonder about, if a player commits to transfer, like at this time, maybe even signs something, and then all of a sudden somebody that was on the roster who thought they thought was leaving because that's why they wanted to go there, that person stays. Do they change their mind again, or can they? I don't know. Joseph Manjak, real physical player, University of Houston wide receiver. According to Matt Zenitz, who does a great job with a lot of this, coaching news too, is headed to transfer to TCU.
Yeah, he's a really talented player, really good player. That's a tough loss for Houston, who's been dealt some blows when it comes to their receivers these last couple of portal cycles. Did not have the biggest year this year, and I think obviously had some injuries and whatnot involved in that. Mostly just the fact that their offense sucked, and they could not throw the ball very well was probably the biggest reason for Manjak not having a more productive season. But he's a talented player and just never really got it going this year for whatever reason that you want to point to. So I can understand wanting to kind of explore your options and see if there's not something better out there. TCU's been very much a team that's been active in picking up some pretty good wide receiver prospects these last couple of years, and we saw what Jack Beck went and did there this past season. So I think that there's definitely opportunity that you can see and feel and watch on film if you're a wide receiver prospect there with TCU that you don't necessarily feel as confident in with what Houston's got going on, even though they've made changes on offense to try and correct that. So, I think that's a really good pickup for TCU. We'll see, how involved he is and what the rest of that room looks like. But I like that for them a lot and thought he would be a good pickup once he kind of made it known that he might be out there. I thought that he was going to be a really good get for somebody, so it just turns out to be the Frogs, and maybe he'll get to see his team again next year. I don't know what TCU's 2025 schedule looks like in terms of Houston being on there or not, but that's a good get.
Dabo Swinney is on the streets and loose. Signed his first transfer portal. Tristan Smith played at Southeast Missouri State, put up some big numbers. Also was at Hutchinson Community College before he went into college. 76 catches a year ago, nearly 950 yards and 6 scores, and also had a pretty big game in the first playoff game against Illinois State in the FCS playoffs. So Clemson has popped the bubble when it comes to getting in the transfer portal. I think you'll see maybe a small handful. He is the first.
He's the first non-quarterback.
Yeah,
they've hit the transfer portal and gotten quarterbacks before, but he's the first non-quarterback that they've signed. So that's kind of ridiculous that we've gotten this far into the portal era, and that's been the case with Clemson. It's also kind of ridiculous they've managed to have as much success as they've had despite not really dipping in there. So as much flack as Dabo's received for that, and rightfully so, he's also been able to kind of throw it back at people, as ACC champion and in the playoff, after all the talk about him needing to change his ways and all that, here they are again. They're still playing for a national title. But, that's going to be a cool footnote for the updated Trivial Pursuit Clemson Football Edition. That'll be a great trivia question for the Clemson fans and college football fans out there. Who was Dabo's first non-quarterback transfer pickup? That's a cool little footnote in history, and we'll see how far they take it. But I think it's a good sign and a welcome sign if you're a Clemson fan to see them start to spread their wings a little bit.
I want to get to a couple of quotes from coaches, but there's two more names to get through the transfer players, and sometimes we'll start with coaching carousel, and sometimes we'll start with whatever news there is or games, etc. in college football. But Reese Poffenberger from Albany is committed to North Texas. There he is. He threw for 3,600 yards, 36 touchdowns. Very prolific in the FCS. He now is went to Miami, and then, of course, Albany, and now headed to North Texas because Morris is headed to Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a nice pickup for North Texas. They had a pretty productive offense this past year, productive enough that Chandler Morris decided to take his ball and go head back into the portal for the third time. Ridiculous, but regardless, Reese Poffenberger, well-traveled in his own right, clearly, as you point out there. So, I think North Texas, as much as it's going to be tough to retain some of their original guys that break out and become good players, they will always be a solid landing spot for guys like a Reese Poffenberger who's maybe on his second or third stop, and they've proven that they can, produce numbers at the quarterback position. So it seems like a solid pickup from where I sit. But, the Chandler Morse thing had me a little riled up yesterday just because it just speaks to sort of the environment that we're in. And some love it, some hate it. I fall somewhere in between. It depends on what we're talking about specifically. But you can't sit there and bitch about it too much if you're North Texas and turn around and go get a guy who's on his third school. So, you lose guys, you gain guys. That's just the environment we're in, and good for the Mean Green to go and address a position of need.
Garrett, we'll skip the one next, the next quarterback. We'll bring that up a little bit later. I want to get to this quote from Rhett Lashley. Of course, they're in the college football playoff and playing this weekend. People are bombarding our roster, trying to pick off our roster, and we're trying to focus on the playoff game. I'm not going to be old man, get off my lawn. I thought about this a lot when I was driving to East Texas and back into Tyler and back. And it's not get off my lawn. The NCAA created this because they waited too long. We've been through that. Everyone has an opinion on that. The freedom of movement, whatever. But I started thinking, I was listening to the podcast, and I'm like, what's going on here? Like, this is truly, as UT Parking said in the chat, off the rails. Some people would argue that, no, this is fair. I don't know what's good or bad, but that's from Rhett Lashley as they're preparing to play in the college football playoff, where like the backup quarterback at Penn State is going to transfer. Yeah, it's like the timeline of, did people with brains get into a meeting and go, hey, you do know some of this is going to cross over. Shouldn't we look at this first, or are they just scared of lawsuits? But there's Rhett Lashley getting ready for their opening playoff game.
Well, I mean, I don't even know if they're scared of lawsuits at this point. Those are just automatic losses. So I don't know if you're even scared because you've taken so many on the chin that you already know the outcome, basically. And so I don't know if it's scary to get served lawsuits anymore because you already know the outcome and all that. But I do think as much as the chaos can be fun, like, for example, you're sitting here today, and if you're a fan of any number of teams, you've picked up a commit today, or there's a transfer portal guy you're after. Like, that's exciting. You also may be on the other side talking about the guy you just lost in the transfer portal. Maybe that was a good subtraction. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. There's the coaching carousel. West Virginia fans are fired up. They probably hope they're one of those teams picking off some of those SMU players. Like, the chaos can be fun depending on what side of the table you're sitting on. It can also be exhausting no matter where you're sitting because it just seems never ending. And this was a situation entirely created by college football's leaders who decided to be as greedy as possible until the courts told them that they couldn't take any more money without there being some legal repercussions. And then they proceeded to find ways to still make as much money as they always did, but pull the extra money now needed from other places. And the greed led us here. But for all the talk about guardrails and all of that, I think the biggest problem is you're trying to be a professional sport and you're acting as though school's getting in the way when you're a school and the football's the secondary. And I know that's not the case. And like my school, like I'm not trying to get an argument about the importance and all of that, but these schools, first and foremost, is what they are, right, are having a problem because school's getting in the way of their football programs' timelines. And I don't know how you correct that. You can't adjust semesters to comply with football and whether or not that program makes the college football playoffs, so their calendar's different that year as compared to other years. It's messy. It's definitely not going to be cleaned up anytime relatively soon, and I don't know how it gets cleaned up. I don't have the solutions to that, but the officials, in charge of the game led to this with their stubbornness and their greed and their inability to try and cut this off at the head, even though they had plenty of warnings that this was coming. So, it is what it is, and you're just going to wade through the muck as a fan and hopefully get to another side here sooner rather than later where it's a bit cleaned up, because I don't think the way it is now is sustainable in terms of maintaining an audience for years to come. Like, I think you have your hardcores that are going to be on board with changes, but I don't think you can do this for another 5 years of just chaos and everybody who's always been on board is going to remain on board.
Well, I love college football, and I know our guest coming up, in fact, right now, he joins us, BYU football coach, our great friend, Kalani Sitake. Hey, look at that great smile. We appreciate your time. Craig Smoak, David Smoak with you today. Kalani, we want to get, of course, into your bowl game and what's going on with your program and more, and congratulations on a heck of a run. I know it didn't end quite the way you wanted, but do you think that there are enough smart people, with all the people involved in the investment in college athletics, that we can get this timeline of when you can go or not if you're practicing, and can somebody transfer? Can they wait until after a game? Is this ever going to be like put together where it makes sense for everybody?
Yeah, I think people figure it out. It's the same thing with the playoff. I think once something happens and you kind of see it. I mean, I don't think anything's supposed to be 100% thought through. And so when you're looking at it, I know one thing: the NCAA and the way we have it with college football is willing to change. So if it wasn't ideal for coaches and for players and for the student athletes, I think the goal is to be centered around the student athletes first. If we can make it better for the student athletes, and then also for the programs, because those are the ones that are running the student athletes, and then I think we'll be okay. But I mean, I know that this isn't ideal for some people, but all I know is you tell me the rules, and I abide by them and try to make them work. Work for what we're trying to do as a program. So I know that everybody has opinions right now, but it's different because I think I caught the end of it when you guys are talking about the scheduling, and when some people are at quarters, some people are at semesters. When you're talking about academics and things like that, it makes it really, really tough. So, and I know the academic year has got to be pointed. I mean, when this all is said, when we're all talking about it, what's getting lost in the whole mix is that aren't these kids supposed to get their degrees? That's what we got to be focused on, right? So, whatever we can do to get them back, focusing on completing their degree and getting their whatever the degrees they want to be in, that so they can, because football is going to end. It's the inevitable truth that football will end for all these young men at some point, and it's usually not when they want it to. So we've got to have a plan for them after that.
Coach, looking back on it, when you saw your team voted 13th in the preseason poll, how hard did you and your coaches laugh behind the scenes, knowing that you had a much better team than probably people were anticipating?
Well, I think it's really hard to do. I mean, nothing personal. I think we kind of knew we had something better than that, but how are you supposed to know when you don't know what the other teams are doing? And so I don't fault anybody. I think when I mentioned it in the media day in the summer that I get it. There's a lot of parity in this league too, and so I mean, not a lot of people thought. If you look at it where ASU is at, that we would be sitting in this position with ASU being. I mean, they were last, and then they ended up being the champion. So it just shows you how tough the league is, and you just have to be ready to play. I mean, nothing's easy here. I think a lot of people thought they saw it working a certain way, and the one thing I've seen in the 2 years that I've been in this conference is that whatever you think isn't going to, so that gives everybody a shot.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that as a follow-up, and you're right. We've seen it with TCU in 22, Baylor in 21, and you had a chance to play them that year. What you guys did, or ASU this year, or Colorado this year. Why is that? Is it because there's just so many different teams, maybe not enough of the highest level, although Arizona State's trying to maybe put themselves in that position? Why is it that we don't know from year to year?
Well, I think one thing is you have to give a lot of credit to the coaches that are in this conference. There's some really, really amazing coaches that know how to run a program and know how to get their teams ready to play. And then when you look at the brand of the teams, the toughness, the physical part of the game, it's in the fan base, and it's in the team. So it's not one of those things that you can actually predict. And so I like it that way. Gives everybody a chance. So we're just hoping that we can keep improving our chances for next year, and a big part of that is being ready for this bowl game.
I was just curious, do you happen to know Scott Frost or Rich Rodriguez at all, the two new additions to the head coaching ranks in this league?
Yeah, I know both of them. Been able to interact with both of them. Really good men, and I think it's just when you look at it, just things don't get easier when you get all these wonderful coaches that are coming in that know how to recruit, know how to develop their players. It's just going to add more to the intrigue of the conference. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Kalani, there's been times when, for example, people asked you about when ASU stormed the field or about this and that. You always seem to have an answer that I'm not sure everybody could feel the same way you do. That it's not like any kind of conspiracy, or it's not like unfair. That doesn't mean you can't be frustrated with a call or two. Is that something that's always just been in your DNA?
Well, I think first of all, what's in my DNA is I'm a fan first. I think I've been a fan before I was a football player at the college level, and a fan before I was a head coach. And so the fan is always still in me. And so I can understand. I try to understand where fans are coming from, even the fans that give me a hard time. I get it. They're excited about the team. And so I don't take anything personal. I think it's more about them and their excitement, their energy. And so you can't get really frustrated when there's a lot of excitement going around the game of football. And sometimes it works out in our favor, sometimes it doesn't. But more than anything, I just look at the opportunity that we had to, be a part of this game. I think for me, I just have so much gratitude and appreciation. I mean, it sucks to lose, but even in the defeats, I can take a lot of happiness in just the appreciation that I get to do what I do, and that I get to be around these young men that I get to coach, and amazing fans that are on our team with Cougar Nation, and then the interaction that I have from fans from other teams. I mean, it's been nothing but positive, but I have to see it from their point of view, and when I can see it as being a fan first, can't have anything but excitement for and happiness for them.
So you guys were very much involved all the way up until the end in terms of competing for the Big 12 championship, and the tiebreakers just didn't work out your way. I was just curious because we've heard, coaches kind of talk about different things, ins and outs, things they like to change. Chris Kleiman talking about the scheduling, and he was talking more about the Big 12 kind of promoting itself and bettering itself in terms of the college football playoff. I'm curious to your thoughts on that in general, but also when it comes to the scheduling, do you have any qualms or any ideas, anything that you would like to change, or do you think it's fine the way that the league already has it sort of set up?
Well, I'll do whatever everyone says. I mean, that's what I do. But I kind of, as a fan in me, I'm really liking the basketball conference versus conference thing. Like the Big 12 versus the Big East in basketball.
Oh yeah.
The ACC versus the SEC. Like that would be kind of fun for the Big 12 to schedule in the non-conference games, to schedule some of the other whatever conference it is, just match them up and see how that works. I mean, that'd be a lot of excitement, especially at the preseason before you get to the bowl games. Then you kind of settle it on the field when everybody's saying, well, this conference is tougher than that conference. Like, why don't we play ball and let's figure that out, And we won't figure that out in the bowl game that we're playing against, because we're going against Colorado, yeah, who's a conference member. So, it kind of works against us in the when you're trying to brag about your conference. But I would love to participate. I'd love to play the other conferences. I think I have a lot of pride in our conference. I mean, I say this over and over again. You don't even want to see my March Madness bracket, because it's all Big 12 teams in the Final Four. So that's just how it. I know we're a new member, but I got a lot of pride and excitement for our conference. So that's how it's going to look. I'm pretty sure it's going to look that way this year too.
I think a lot of people, when the Pac-12, or what it now is too, and eventually will grow again, had the little addendum about bowl games. I wondered how that might work out with Colorado and Arizona State, Utah, whoever, and you end up getting them, which is a great football game. I mean, really fun game. When you first heard that, what was your reaction, and when did you kind of have an inkling, had been given a heads up that could happen?
Yeah, I was hoping for it, and mostly because I have so much respect for Colorado, for their fans, but especially for their coaches, for Dion, and for the look at the talent that they have on their team. I mean, I'm looking for our players to be excited and to. I mean, you're going to be going against the Heisman Trophy winner, and you're going to be, but some of the best players in college football. And if I'm looking for an opportunity for us to be excited to go into the game, this is it right here. And I'm hoping that this can really be a preview of what we can accomplish, what things that we can do as a team for the 2025 season. So just tons of energy around it. And, I'm excited for the game. I know I want to see us against other conferences, but with this opponent and with the talent that we're seeing from Colorado, we see it on film like crazy. So this is going to be a great challenge for us. I'm looking for the challenge for us to up our game and make our team better. Also, to just spend that time with the seniors that are outgoing, getting ready for the next level, and then really improve the development that we have on our team, get them excited for 2025.
Travis Hunter wins the Heisman. Obviously, there were other great players, Ashton Genty and the others who were involved. Your thoughts about, and you mentioned, Dion has made it clear they're staying. They're going to play in this game. You guys have pretty much, I think, your full throttle who will play in this game. I wish it was like that. I'm sure everybody does. But at the same time, being able to, like you said, those weapons they have. And by the way, their defense, as you know, started playing great in the last half of the year.
Yeah, well-coached team. And you look at what they're doing. I mean, when we look at the way the conference ended, They're the tiebreakers that happened, but we were the guys that were from the outside looking in. Now we get to play each other. We didn't get to play them this year, and now we get to go against them. And like I said, I'm looking forward to us upping our game and maybe enhancing our level of play because we know what we're seeing on film, and that stuff's going to show up on that game. And man, tons of respect for them. We're looking forward to this matchup. It's going to be a lot of fun. I like their fan base, and I know our fan base. It'll show up. I think a lot of eyes will be in this game, and it's an honor for us to be part of it.
I've heard Dion talk about you, too. He's mentioned things about Joey McGuire among some other coaches. What are some of the interactions that you've ever had before he took over at Colorado?
Well, I mean, obviously, who didn't love Dion when he was a player? So I think I was always impressed with him as a player, just how the game of football seemed easy to him and that he could play baseball. He could do everything, offense, defense. He could return the ball. I mean, he's such a dynamic player. And then when you see him as a coach, the personality that he has, I've just been really impressed with his connection to his players. The fact that he loves his faith and talks about it often. I think we're very similar that way. I can appreciate that about him. And more than anything, just I like the way he leads his team. And when you look at everybody, all the coaches I said this before, there's some really great coaches. That I think all the coaches in this conference are amazing coaches. I just like them as people too. I mean, when we get all the coaches together, it's just kind of hard because you like them all and you like they lead their teams. And then you're just like, man, it just makes it easier when you don't like somebody. But we happen to like everyone, and the interaction that we have with each other it's really special. And I think a lot of that goes to the leadership that we see from the teams in this conference, but also Brett Yormark and what he does with his leadership of the Big 12 and the interaction that we have together. It's pretty cool, man. And Dion's got a great personality, but he's also very kind and very gracious with his time with everybody and has great insight. So I mean, I love being around all these coaches in the Big 12 meetings. I sit there and I take a lot of notes. I'm just like really impressed with the way that they speak about their teams and the way that the insight that they have that I think could really help our conference become even better and help our brand.
Coach, we talked about the rankings at the beginning. Nobody really knows in a conference like this, especially what to expect. But I remember talking to you there during the summertime, and I remember there's still quarterback competition ongoing, and Jake Retzloff obviously goes and wins that and has this massive year to where you're excited about the now, but also the moving forward as well. Just what's that journey been like alongside him, watching him and watching him grow and really take over that position?
Yeah, Jake's done an amazing job, and I've been really happy with the progress that he's made, also from last year to now. So he just keeps getting better and better the more time he spends in our offense. And so really looking forward to the time that he could taking advantage of the time that he has now in the bowl prep and the connection that he has to his teammates. He's done a great job. His leadership extends to all three phases, not just offense. And I love the way our seniors are really spending so much time in teaching the younger guys, and Jake's doing that in the quarterback room. I see our quarterback plays improved quite a bit because of the leadership that we're seeing from our seniors and specifically from Jake. Now I get to have him back for another year, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really good that we have a really cool system and that we're able to take advantage of the bowl practices. We didn't have this last year, and we really missed it. Just the opportunity we had to keep playing football and being around each other. And we've taken every advantage of it now, and really looking forward to the festivities, the excitement around the bowl game, and also playing this game. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Can you try to explain why, other than just repetitions, or maybe the underclassmen being able to also practice during these up until your game next week, how critical? And think about the teams that are there year after year after year after year that get these extra 13 or 12 or 15 practices.
Well, it's just another spring ball. When you look at spring ball, everyone's trying to get ready for fall camp and trying to get some competition going on. But when you have that opportunity to do that at the end of the year, those are valuable practices. So the race to get this bowl eligibility is real, and for us, that's part of our program. If we're trying to develop players, we have young guys that need to get better in these short amount of practices, a dozen to 15, however many you can fit in there. It's also the development process where we need to get them, some guys need to get bigger and stronger, and that can happen in that in the holiday season. And but it's a lot easier to do it when you're actually playing the game of football. When your season's over and you're not bowl eligible, you can't put the football out there anymore. You can't get out there and coach the kids. So that makes it really difficult. And then you have to put all of that time and energy in spring ball, and you really couldn't focus on the little details, the fundamentals of the game. And that's what we're able to do. We're able to make sure they go through this with a fine-tooth comb and just make sure none of our guys are missing out on the development. And then when everybody's doing portal recruiting, the development is going to be a big part of our program and how we get these guys progressing.
We won't hear from you again for a while, but hopefully soon after the first of the year. Merry Christmas to you. Happy New Year, all that. Good luck against Colorado. And it's been a pleasure to get to know you as much as we have in these last 2 or 3 years. Kalani, thanks for your access.
I've always enjoyed it. Thank you, guys. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
You too. Kalani Sitake, BYU football coach, with us. Just enjoy the access we've had thanks to those who give us that opportunity, Kenny Cox and Brett Pine.
Yeah, big shout out to the good folks over at BYU. There's other programs that it's nearly impossible to get head coaching access regularly, much less at all. And I feel like I get to talk to Kalani pretty regularly. So that's a definite feather in BYU's cap that I appreciate, and something about them that's definitely been good for this show, to have Kalani Sitake available to talk 3-4 times a year, give or take, if not more than that, depending on kind of what events are ongoing. But it's always fun, always enlightening, and always cool to just see how cool Kalani Sitake is, because I do think he's one cool customer, one of the most well-liked coaches out there in the game right now. And I think his temperament and his patience with the game and all of its changes is something that a lot of people could probably stand to embrace, of like, it is what it is, just got to deal with it and not get too bent out of shape over it. And I agree with that sort of approach, because it'd be very easy to get bent out of shape, especially as a head coach these days. But I think he's got the perfect demeanor to kind of handle all of that. And they've had a great year. They've definitely got to feel like maybe they left a little on the bone, but I think that in terms of ending on a high note, you can't get a bigger matchup than the one with Colorado. I mean, outside of being in the college football playoff, and maybe, okay, you'd play Alabama or something in the same type of bowl game. But, I mean, in terms of a game that's going to have meaning, in terms of a game that is not a playoff game, but that will have people buzzing and plenty of people watching on TV, like, this might be the highest rated bowl game of the entire non-playoff schedule, these two teams playing. And I think it'll be a hell of a game. Get to go up against the Heisman Trophy winner and possibly the number 1 overall pick and the number 2 overall pick. I love this matchup. I just wish it didn't have the conference tie-in like everybody else has complained about. But like Kalani Sitake, I'm going to take the high road here, and instead of complaining about it, just say, like, hey, we get a hell of a game. So I'm looking forward to BYU and Colorado, and I always appreciate his time.
Scott Drew will join us in the next segment, and then we have much more to get to on this show today, including looking at Max Olson, who he thinks are the top 5 teams early in the transfer portal who have been making some money and making some hay, and also getting players to come into their program. We'll look at the Big 12 bowl games, many more things to get to, and more quotes from ADs, coaches, etc. in college football about the transfer portal. There's more to get to. Scott Drew, Baylor men's basketball coach, next on 365 Sports.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgin Ford. Join us for our Black Friday sale where over $16 million in inventory is on sale right now. This month only, get a 24 F-150 for under $500 a month, or a 24 Bronco, only $470 a month. Selection and save all month long at Bird Colgan Ford during our Black Friday sales event. Visit us anytime at bkford.com or come by and experience better at BK Ford.
I'll never get used to this.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
365 Sports with Baylor's national championship head coach, Scott Drew, who joins Craig Smoak and me here on 365 Sports. Thank you, Coach. You guys have a little bit of a break before you play again. How do you handle the schedules, players being able to maybe get away or not, or how does all that work right now?
Well, blessed this year from the standpoint the guys are going to get an extra day or two at home that they normally wouldn't get. And we'll see how it plays out. Some people swear by it. Some people don't like it. But normally we're playing a game on the 20th or 21st, and then the guys go home. And then we bring them back on usually the 26th. And this year, the 19th will be the last day of practice. So most of them will get home the evening of the 19th or the morning of the 20th. And what it's allowed us to do is so far so good this week. People have been healthy. We've been able to have some good practices and improve in some areas where when we were a little banged up, we weren't able to, and playing as many games as we weren't able to really spend much time getting better ourselves. And at the same time, preparing for what we're about to face in the Big 12 as far as starting to dive into some offenses and defenses that we'll face in the beginning of the year with Big 12 opponents.
One more game with Arlington Baptist before you start Big 12 conference play with Utah, and I had to kind of look at the logo and say, oh, it's a Big 12 game. You said getting better. How can you get better besides, obviously, there's a lot of things you have to get better at.
Yeah. I think if you nowadays there's analytics for everything, but offensively, free throw shooting is the biggest area where we're a 75-80% shooting free throw team in our coach's opinion, and we haven't shot it that well yet this year. Right now we got the fifth best offense out of 364 teams. So if we can raise that free throw percentage up, now you can hopefully climb in the top three. And as far as we've continued to get better with turnover rate and trying to get better at different facets within our offense. But at the same time, pretty good on that side of the ball defensively. It's been an area where we were as low as 87, and I think currently at 76 on Ken Palm Analytics, and trying to continue to improve on. We have a great turnover rate. We're forcing a lot of people into turnovers, which leads to easy buckets on our end of things. But at the same time, when they're getting shots up, especially from three, they're shooting way too high a percentage. So working on how we can take away shooters better, how we can close out with a better sense of urgency. And then at the same time, you start the season with a game plan you think will work, and then you tweak, adjust based on who you play and what their strengths are. And then the more that they get comfortable in rotations and defensive schemes, the better you get at it. And hopefully we can continue to improve and be ready come Big 12 play there.
Was the transformation in the personality and identity of your team back when Tristan Clark went down a few years back, and then what you changed into, was that probably the most drastic kind of change you've made in season?
Oh, without a doubt. From a standpoint, you were normally offenses, if you can find one player that scores one-on-one or makes them put two on the ball, then that creates advantages for everybody else. And that year, Tristan Clark was the one guy that people had to double, and if not, he was shooting nation's highest field goal percentage. So a lot of everything we did was geared toward getting him the ball and playing out of that. And when he went down, we had to completely revamp, rechange everything. But at the same time, good teams aren't one-dimensional. They can hurt you in a variety of ways. And we became a lot more perimeter-oriented, and the guys did a great job responding until we lost to Gonzaga in the tournament.
You have mentioned analytics many times over the last few years. It wasn't always something that was there, or even some coaches were maybe afraid of it or like, ooh. When did you grasp onto it? When did it become something that you loved what it might bring to you?
Well, actually, I think we were one of the first schools to really dive into analytics, and Ryan Resch, who's been one of the heads of the Phoenix Suns for the last several years, was probably our first GA that came in and helped develop our own. We used to do our own analytics before everybody had scouting services that had analytics with it. But I think we were ahead of the curve there, and then obviously everybody does them now.
Scott, this is not meant to be like a zinger, but could you have ever imagined that this team would be at one point this year unranked?
No, but at the same time, not overly consumed with that from the standpoint. We know what determines our season and the success of it isn't being ranked right now. It's what we do in conference and what we do in postseason. So you look at it, and I think take out the Gonzaga game, and we're 2-2 against teams that will be in the NCAA tournament probably, and should be seeded fairly high. We've probably played 3 teams year to date that very easily could be in a Final Four, and then 2 that are more like us, meaning blending personnel together and not having as many returning guys. And hopefully, as the season continues to go, teams that are in that boat usually have a chance to have a higher ceiling and improve more throughout the year, just because they have more margin and room to grow. So like a lot of the things, if we were 0-5 in those games, or 1-4, I'd be a little more worried. But would you like to be 3-2? Yeah. Same time, I was talking to the UConn staff the other day, and I mean, we lost by 30, 40, 36 or 40 against Gonzaga, and UConn beats them, and we could have beaten UConn. I mean, that was anyone's game down in the last minute. So you can look at just that part of it and say, man, we made a lot of strides for 2 road games. One, you went from getting blown out to the next one you got a chance to win. So hopefully that's the direction we're heading. Big thing for us has been health too. I don't think any team that wins a championship, probably most coaches will tell you in those from Major League Baseball to football to basketball, they probably did a good job staying healthy enough where they could improve and put a team out there that could win each and every week. And that's one thing we really, up until this week, haven't had a chance to really practice with our guys that are playing most minutes in the rotation. And that's been a blessing this week thus far.
How did you guys not, I guess you could say, did you challenge Josh to be more aggressive after the UConn game, that he has to be better for you? And that doesn't mean others don't have to be better too. They do. But you kind of challenged him that, man, we need you really badly to step up.
Well, I think he's always known that. I think he's been a backup for 2 years, and I think one thing about his nature is, a lot of people want to play with a big that likes to pass. A lot of times he'll get a rebound underneath, and you're like, why don't you score it? And the great thing is he's unselfish and he's a great teammate. But he sets two things that you don't usually see in the stat line. Sets unbelievable Gore-Tex screens when people are driving, and he's a great ball screener and off-ball screener. And that contributes to a lot of success for us offensively. Defensively, he's an elite perimeter defender for a big. What we've asked him to do more of is finish more inside. We've asked him to try to affect more block shots and get more rebounds. And I think he's improving in all those areas, and hopefully he continues. And part of the scoring part is us doing a better job giving him the ball when he is open, and I think we've gotten better at that as well.
Norshad Omier is man, what a pickup that was, and you knew that when you got him out of Miami. Matt Roberts told me that he's 92 rebounds and 18 points away from becoming the 14th player in NCAA history to have 2,000 points scored and 1,500 rebounds. Has he even been better than you thought?
I thought very highly of him coming in. I tell you the areas he's been better than I thought. He has an unbelievable work ethic, and a lot of bigger players, and when I mean bigger, like interior players in basketball, play because everybody tells them to play and they're good at it, but they don't really love it or work on their game as much as guards traditionally do. And one thing, he really gets in the gym. He works at his shooting. He shot an enormous amount of shots this summer, and then lost 15 pounds, so he'd be better on the perimeter. And that work ethic, I knew it was good. I didn't know it'd be that good. So hats off to him.
One more thing, Scott. Thank you very much. I know you got meetings and media and practices and all that other stuff to go. When you played defense, and you guys, my goodness, I don't know if anyone ever played it better than the team that won the national title, but you had some dogs, and you have a few of those that look like they have fangs, but is that one of the, and maybe a large bite, jowl, whatever you want. Do you have they all, are they tough enough, and are they mean enough to make you and help you play better defense?
Yeah, I think a couple things. Hopefully, as our scheme offensively and defensively becomes clearer and easier, then there's less thinking involved. And sometimes people think, well, defensively, really, how does that? I mean, your rotations, where you channel the ball, what you do in the post. I mean, all those different nuances on off-ball screens, ball screens. As we've gone on, I think things are becoming easier and easier for them, and that allows them to be more and more aggressive. So I definitely we're trending in the right direction. Now we just need to keep doing that against Big 12 opponents coming up. And I'm one of those, the glass is always half full guys, but I definitely think that freshmen sometimes, and new players sometimes physically maybe can't defend as well against 5th and 6th year guys, and then transfer guys that are new in your scheme might not physically be ready for Big 12 play. I don't see any of that with our guys. I think if there's any limitations, it'll be on what we put on ourselves. So I would fully expect us to be better defensively in Big 12 play than we've been year to date. So hopefully I'm right on that.
Yep.
And again, a lot of that is having everybody in practice, getting better, and Rob and VJ being 2 freshmen that are big contributors have both definitely gotten a lot better on the defensive end and knowing what we want and how we want it done. And a lot of times in high school, the biggest adjustment's not on the offensive end, it's on the defensive end. And both of them came in where the offensive game is pretty easy for them, and defensively maybe more rules and whatnot than they were used to. So that's been something good for them. And then the transfer guys, they've been in good programs. They've been coached by good coaches, and it's just a matter of, again, all of us being on the same page and being better at what we do.
No question. Pat Nunley, I saw him the other day. He was raving about what Rob Wright brought to the table with that game against Norfolk State with the 13 assists and what he's brought to the table. That has to be a great, bright spot to see what he can do as well. And so good. I wanted to make sure I brought him up. Scott, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the holiday break, and then you guys come back for one more non-conference game, and then, of course, Iowa State. Oh, boy, to open up Big 12 play with all those teams that are ranked, and you will be eventually. Thanks for your time.
Hey, appreciate you. Thank you, Baylor fans. Happy holidays to you, and look forward to seeing you in the Foster when we get back.
Yes, sir. That's Scott Drew, men's basketball coach at Baylor, with us on 365 Sports. So they're 7-3, and he mentioned, they got like pummeled by Gonzaga. I remember staying up late that night, and I saw the first 5 or 6 minutes. I said, okay. And then, man, that thing got out of hand. Then they beat Arkansas in a slugfest up in Dallas and Fort Worth. They were beaten up by Tennessee, who's number 1 in the country right now, I think even undefeated. UConn, I was listening to that game one time driving up to Dallas and Fort Worth, and that was a hell of a game. They just did not make the plays down the stretch. So they have Arlington Baptist on the 27th. Then they open up Big 12 play, home against Utah, and then Iowa State on the road on January the 4th. So a lot of time between now and then, thanks to Scott Drew being a part of our show today on 365 Sports. When we come back, who are the teams that Max Olson, who's one of our weekly guests from ESPN, he thinks they're off to the best start in the transfer portal, plus many other conversations and topics. This is 365 Sports. The Baylor alumni fan engagement coming up when that bowl game hits on December 31st, New Year's Eve. Baylor alumni fan engagement, Doug Furch and Paul Thorpe have put together numerous activities for you to be a part of as you want, whether it's tailgating outside of the stadium, NRG, or whether it's even nightly activities where there are alums and boosters and donors who get together to talk about life or even the end of the year, and, of course, Baylor athletics and Baylor football. So if you want to go to their Facebook page and look at some of the times, the events, the sites, and more, plus what they plan on doing for those of you that will be in Houston for the Texas Bowl between Baylor and LSU. Paul Thorpe and Doug Furch, the Baylor alumni fan engagement. Go to Facebook and more.
Oh, Richard Carr, Buick, GMC, how lovely are your SUVs. Oh, Richard Carr, Buick, GMC, I love the trucks you have for me. Strong and tough with luxury, room for all my family. Oh, Richard Carr, Buick, GMC, you are the dealership for me.
Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Containing only 95 calories and 2.6 carbs.
Baylor and LSU, one of the bowl games. It's the Big 12 and the SEC, among the 9 teams in the Big 12 who will be a part of bowl games. And I wanted to clarify something because David Anderson, who has listened to us over the years and also either listens or watches this show, sent me a direct message. I think it was a direct message on Twitter. He heard us talking about Kinder's, the bowl game between LSU and Baylor. I don't even know what I thought initially. And when I asked Paul about it a week or so ago, he mentioned, what did he say, Garrett? He said
it was chocolate from
candy from Germany.
European chocolate.
I think eventually it was either from Germany or he had thought it was Italian. It was Germany or maybe even from Sweden. I don't know. It is, by the way, it's the leading provider of premium quality sauces and seasonings, is the new title sponsor, has devoted 75 years of crafting award-winning flavors, including barbecue and wing sauces, as well premium seasonings and rubs.
Well, thank you to David for smartening up the room. This is also your fault to an extent because you just went along with it when you're like, oh, yeah, it's chocolate.
What I said is I don't know what it is to you. And then
why'd you ask the question?
What do you mean?
I thought you asked it like that you knew, and then you were asking us.
No, I didn't know because I wanted to cross-check.
So you asked us not having any idea.
I did not have any idea.
Rolled with us.
Nope.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. There is a Kinder chocolate. There is Kinder. It's a brand of chocolate, and so to think that was what it was not far off because Google Kinder chocolate and a bunch of products like Kit Kat looking stuff will pop up. So that's where my mind was. I know. I didn't know there was a barbecue sauce connection at all. So that is good information to have and good for them to have like the proper understanding of who the bowl sponsor is out there, so that people don't show up thinking that it's a chocolate company. Instead, make sure that people realize, especially being the Texas Bowl, that, that makes a lot more sense. It's a barbecue sauce. So that's good for them to get some cleanup on the product identifier there.
Your chocolate is singular, and this is the apostrophe S, which is
Kinder
is
the brand of the chocolate. But so that's what I first thought of was chocolate, and I guess Paul did as well. But no, it's a barbecue. It's barbecue products, sauces, and whatnot. So that makes a lot more sense as the sponsor of the Texas Bowl. It's much more fitting.
Here's one thing. It was founded in 1946 by a World War II Navy veteran, John Kinder. So a little history. That's when I was bored one night, started digging around. And then as I was doing that, David Anderson, I was looking at history between LSU and Baylor. He sent me that note, and thank you, David, for letting me and us know what the difference is.
Yeah, I'm sure Kinder's is thankful as well. I'm sure that probably we're not the first people to think, hear Kinder or Kinder's and think of the different products. So, the company, I'm sure, is thankful, and now we're helping spread the word so that everybody knows the Texas Bowl is sponsored by the proper company here.
Teams have not met since 1985 in a win by Baylor. Cody Carlson was the head coach, and we'll have more on that, of course, and also be there in Houston for our broadcast from the hotel Oak Lone. What's the name of that street that we're going to stay at, or the hotel we're staying at? It's a Hilton.
Garden Oaks.
Garden Oaks. Yeah, we'll be there on Monday for the afternoon show, and then also Monday morning with our pregame show, also simulcast on KWTX. So, Max Olson, who will hopefully join us on Thursday, his schedule right now with all this transfer portal, that's what he aces at. 5 teams to get off to a good start. Number 1, that does not include anything today. Number 1, Texas Tech. Absolutely going to the buyers in this cycle, determined to assemble one of the best portal classes. So they lose a 5-star receiver to A&M. There is some attrition, and yet they have absolutely done it, and they've done it methodically with exactly what they need, even though they still want to add some more.
Yeah, they've gotten off to a nice start. I mean, it's very early, but as far as the people through the first, 6-7 days of this thing, getting probably closer to 10 now at this point, whatever it's been, through those first few days, it's been a lot of Texas Tech. So, they should be excited about the start they're off to. They've addressed some major needs, as you mentioned, the secondary and the offensive line in particular. But they've also, accounted for the loss of a Micah Hudson, and I think the sentiment I get from most of their fan base, and it's the right tack to take because, there's no crying over spilt milk, right? Like, what good does it do you to sit there and bemoan, oh, my God, Micah Hudson's not here anymore, and like he didn't do much when he was there, whether it be injury or whatever you want to chalk it up to. They're good receivers that they already had on campus that were already in front of him that he didn't really have any reason to hop over. They had a good wide receiving group, and so that didn't work out, but I don't see people crying over that. They've moved on pretty quickly from that and have now turned the narrative from losing a 5-star to being, I guess, one of the hotter teams in the portal through these first few days. And I think that's clear through the number of pickups. But, you look at the positions of need. You look at where some of those guys kind of ranked in terms of the interest nationally, and they picked up some guys that a lot of other teams wanted. So they clearly had a plan in place. They've got whatever it else is that you need in place, the money figures or whatever, but the approach is obviously doing them really well right now, and they're scoring a ton of commits. And so, I think it's an exciting start to the offseason that really started to get exciting when you had the coaching changes with Zach Kitley not being your choice. He gets a head coaching job, but then you do make the decision to move on defensively. So you revamp your coordinators, and I think both the hires that they landed on with Sheil Wood coming up from Houston and then Mac Leftwich from San Marcos, I think you feel like both of those guys are on paper upgrades or at least exciting, refreshing hires compared to who you had prior to that. So that's going well. And I think, too, when you've put yourself in this position now to go and win 9 games for the first time under Joey McGuire, there's actually something out there in year 3 to say, like, all right, we took another step forward. We didn't just finish 8-5 again. Now they've got to win that game, right, to make sure that they get that 9th win. But there is that opportunity that's out there to take another step closer to 10 wins and then so on and so forth. And I think they understand that the Big 12 is a very wonky conference and that you need to, be ready to go all in here in year 4 with Joey McGuire and go and try to seize this bad boy. And so it looks like that's what they're doing between the coordinators they've hired and some of the moves they've already made early on in the transfer portal. I think you're identifying Tech, and I think Max probably said something to this effect, but you're identifying them early on as a team that's pushing a lot of chips in the middle of the table and is really looking to strike big in 2025. And I think regardless of whether they win their 9th game or they finish 8-5, you next year, and I think especially with these moves being made, you want to see them now go and grab it a little bit more, right? Like you want to see them play in Arlington next season. It's year 4. It's not do or die time by any means. There's no hot seat or anything like that, but I do think you want to see them make a move like you've seen some other teams make moves next year, and they're lining it up to do that with where they started so far.
All right, so also, Garrett Ross, on this list, your LSU Tigers. It says already collected quite a few high-impact players on offense. They landed one of the most productive playmakers in Barry and Brown, the wide receiver, Kentucky. Oklahoma tight end Bowers Sharp. They also picked up Nebraska's Jamari Butler, who's an edge rusher, among others. So, in fact, Mansour Delane, the number 1 ranked cornerback that was a part of ESPN. So your Tigers have beefed up a little bit.
Yeah, this was something that you kind of expected heading into the offseason. There had to be a lot of attrition on the roster. I think they did an excellent job of turning over in the secondary, which has been an issue all year long. You did a good job by bringing in 2 edge rushers to fill the void that is going to be left behind. You still don't know if Harold Perkins is going to be back next year, if he's going to elect to go to the draft. And then today you added more receiver depth than Destin Hill from Florida State. So LSU's doing everything they can. And then Brian Kelly put out that $1 million match for NIL. I just saw a while ago that somebody else has matched that as well. So they've had 3 people match Brian Kelly. So they're starting to roll in the NIL money to address the issues to get the ball rolling back on track for where LSU should be.
I want to tell you this, you guys. I was listening to a college football show yesterday afternoon for a second. Well, I guess it was in the evening because I'd gotten home. There was actually somebody who criticized Brian Kelly for his $1 million match. They said, hey, why would he have to have it matched? What he was trying to do was spark some people, correct? Right. It wasn't like he was trying
to. The whole point's to raise as much money as possible. It's not to say, hey, Brian Kelly donated $1 million, let's stop there. It's like, hey, how can we make $1 million, $2 million? So there's been 3 matches, so what, they've got $4 million, is that right? If you were to. So that's why. It's very simple, actually.
All 3 matches at $1 million apiece?
Yeah, people have matched him $1 million.
So that's very simple. So you'd rather have $1 million than $4 million?
Yep.
Or $5 million, $6 million? That's the thing. It's unlimited, too. I mean, unless there's a little caveat that I'm not aware of. But, yeah, so that's – well, I guess matching, he's only going to put up $1 million. But I don't know, if 100 others put up $1 million, does he – throw in some more? Either way, he's got $4 million.
Yeah.
No, I know, but I'm thinking about the matching part of it. But yeah, the $4 million from the $1 million that he put forth, I think you're kind of crazy if you're looking to put a negative spin on that or look at that as anything but a positive. And it clearly worked because people are matching, and you've got $3 million that you didn't otherwise have. So yeah, I think that's kind of a weird criticism.
I think one of the programs that seems to do about as well as anybody when it comes to the portal is Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. Scooped up 3 Arkansas transfers. I did see a writer or somebody in media that covers Arkansas even almost wondering, well, those guys left pretty quickly. Was there any tampering involved? I'm just bringing up that was one of the reactions. They got another edge rusher from Nebraska in Princeville. Uman Manea, also.
Not even close.
How do you say it?
I think it's more like Human Milan, but yeah, Princeville Human Milan and his brothers on the Ole Miss roster, and so there was an easy connection there to make. But yeah, he was a guy who I think he and I know his brother Princely for sure was recruited by Baylor and various others during his high school days. So that's where I remember him from. But yeah, I think it's Human Milan, but I might be butchering it as well. But I know it's closer than what you spit out. But there's a lot of tough names we've come across here in the last couple of months. We've all butchered to different extents, but those U's especially.
Yeah.
Uiagalelei, Human Milan, those are the tougher ones.
Who's the other one that I finally got Tua. Tagovailoa.
That's not Nico you struggle with.
Nico
Iamaleava.
Yeah, him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's been some tough names, but yeah, that Human Milan, he's from Nebraska. I mean, that was a good get for Matt Rule.
He lost both of the edge rushers.
Joining his brother there in Oxford.
Nebraska got a long snapper, so that's good. Believe me, that cost him a couple of games. Now,
well, there's a big commit that came down from the Big 12 to Ole Miss. I don't know if you were going to mention that because it just happened in the last few minutes, but I'll say it because this is a player I've talked about at great length. Deshaun Stribling, wide receiver at Oklahoma State, has committed to Ole Miss, so he is joining the Rebels and that haul for Lane Kiffin and company, and I think that is a tremendous pickup for the Rebs. I liked him a lot. I think even in a pretty dark year otherwise in Stillwater, that he was a guy who flashed some big plays and some talent. So I didn't like that loss in terms of Oklahoma State, but I do love that pickup in terms of Ole Miss and them adding to their other couple handfuls of transfers they've already brought in. So, yeah, that was in the last 30 minutes or so. Deshaun Stribling from Oklahoma State to Ole Miss.
And they're also still involved in that Eric Singleton, the wide receiver, Georgia Tech, who's a fantastic player. And then Justice Haynes, the Alabama running back that is in the portal too. Minnesota, P.J. Fleck leading the way with 10 commitments already from the transfer portal, more than any Power 4 program as of Monday morning. So that's yesterday. I tell you, it didn't count today. Got A.J. Turner from Marshall, Darius Taylor, also Cameron Davis of Washington, among many others. Zach Pyron, former Baylor commit, who then went to Georgia Tech. He now is headed to Minnesota. And Rashawn Lawrence from Stony Brook, a very highly rated player from a smaller school on the defensive line. Auburn, Hugh Freeze, got his quarterback in Jackson Arnold. Did he? I mean, is that going to be his guy?
Well, yeah.
Well, I mean,
why else would you go get him?
I saw this big hoopla over this, but is that going to be enough? Where was he ranked among the quarterbacks in the portal?
He's got to be pretty high up there. I mean, I don't know what impression you're under in terms of like the guys.
I'm under the impression Oklahoma's offense sucked and they were 6-6.
Yeah, but their OC got fired and they're doing a whole revamp on that side of the ball. I'm under the impression that he was a 5-star quarterback less than 2 years ago, and Hugh Freeze typically seems to know what he's doing now. He didn't have any answer at quarterback this year with Peyton Thorne, so no, this isn't an exact science, but in terms of you needed a quarterback, you go out and get a quarterback. I don't know who else you were going to go out and get that was going to be the level of Jackson Arnold on paper. Now on the field, that could be something different entirely. Well, that's the whole game here, is everything's a crapshoot when you're picking up players in the portal, but I mean, there's not a Cam Ward out there. There's not a guy like that. So
well, there is now, right? But maybe not with Mateer.
Well, yeah, there's him, but he's basically all but sharpied to Oklahoma right now, and I don't know what interest. I mean, what if he didn't have interest in Auburn? What if Auburn called him and said, "Hey, John Mateer," and he said, "Screw you guys, I'm going to Norman."
I maybe don't think I like Jackson Arnold, what he did at he was at Gaia, right? He was fantastic. I was surprised when I first saw him play at Oklahoma that it just didn't work out, and you wonder if that was because he wasn't ready. The offense was just bad. That's why they also changed coordinators eventually. There were times when I was like, man, I think he's got it. And maybe that's what Hugh Freeze will get him to do now he's at Auburn.
Well, he didn't just lose talent. I mean, he didn't have the best coaching, clearly. He also didn't perform the best. And I don't know, he could be a complete wash in college football. And if he is, then he is. But I think I'm not the biggest fan in the world of Hugh Freeze either. But in terms of making a move, like, yeah, I think that's a splash. In terms of the guys available, a lot of the other players out there had already committed. So in the grouping of guys who are still out there and available, he makes a lot of sense for them, and I think is a good pickup on paper. And I will say on paper a lot this offseason, because a lot of these guys being celebrated these first few days are not going to be as great as they are, the day that they commit to you. But I do think that one makes sense and is a good risk worth taking. And if it doesn't work out, well, then that's going to be more on Hugh Freeze and maybe be part of the reason why he's out of Auburn, Alabama sooner rather than later if he can't nail down that quarterback position, because that's the least he should be able to do.
All right, when we come back, CBS Shahan Jeyarajah will join us on a lot of what we've discussed and get his opinion on it, including the upcoming games to open up the college football playoff. I'll look back at the Heisman, and I'll give you who I voted for when we talk to Shahan as well in the next segment. This is 365 Sports. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans, 48-foot walk-in humidor in between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco. And they've got the best brands of cigars that you can get anywhere. Cohiba, Padron, Rocky Patel, Romeo and Julieta, Macanudo, Artur Fuente, and 48-foot walk-in humidor loaded with them. Plus they have McAuliffe, which is there's a wall when you walk into the right, to the back right, kind of almost towards the front door, but inside the humidor, which has veteran or military brand cigars, those who have built their own cigar companies. And they have Vita Dreams, a gummy that helps you fall asleep a lot more relaxed. And it's not like you start feeling groggy, it's just you're asleep. It doesn't mean it's dangerous. I had somebody ask, well, that means it's just pure drugs. No, it's CBD. And I use it, and it's been really helpful for me to maybe get that extra 30 to 45 minutes, an hour of sleep every single time I go to bed, and which was every day, I hope. And also, they have fresh ground coffee beans if you want those. The favorite brand, apparently, is Cowboy. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans with Joshua and Cheyenne in the Town West Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills, and they will take your calls over the phone, working on their website in Waco.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Paul out today, back we think tomorrow. Craig Smoak with me, David Smoak, 365 Sports, Shahan Jeyarajah. There we are. CBS Sports joins us on the show. Thanks for moving it back a little bit. We had Kalani Sitake and then Scott Drew, and you said, hey, I'll be ready at 4:25, and here we are with you. Thanks for your time. So there's some quotes in this article that I read. It's absolute bedlam. There was one on talking about the transfer portal. All the timelines are all mixed together. Here's another one. I'm indicting everyone, including myself, a longtime athletic director, on what we have. Can this be fixed? How can not smart people get in the room and get this fixed?
Well, there are some real complications with this, and one of them is the literal academic calendar, right? So, like, you can't move back the transfer portal, for example, because, like, you do physically need to get people enrolled in classes. And so I think that's going to be a major complication that heads forward. Now, I think the biggest thing is that you need to at least figure out some way that you can move these dates around. Like right now, we have conference championship games, college football playoff games, postseason games, bowl selection, coaches carousel, transfer portal, high school recruiting, all happening at the same time. It's almost impossible to truly deal with. I think that probably high school recruiting is the easiest one to deal with, where maybe you can either move that up or push it back to February like it was before. But a lot of this stuff is just going to be inevitable to a certain extent, as long as college sports are tied to collegiate classes.
Shahan, we were just talking about some of the transfer names that are out there right now. Jackson Arnold landing at Auburn. What were your thoughts? Seems to make a lot of sense. Smokey's a little less convinced that he's actually the guy based on what he's seen. But do you think this is a nice bounce back spot for Jackson Arnold?
Yeah, it's the thing that I don't love about it is that it's a lot of pressure to perform right away. And I don't know exactly how much of a good situation it is if you're Jackson Arnold. You're going to have a chance to come in and compete day one, which I think is a good thing. But we didn't necessarily see a whole lot of consistency from the rest of this offense. This offensive line hasn't been especially good. You'd think you'd at least have some wide receivers, but we'll see. Hugh Freeze also asked a lot of his quarterbacks, and that's a lot to step into in year one. And by the way, if Hugh Freeze doesn't win this year and win 6 or 7 or 8 games, he's probably fired. And you're starting all over again in 2026. So it's an interesting fit. I don't hate it, but I just think that there's going to be a lot of pressure put on Jackson Arnold. And if I were him, I'd want to find some place that really is invested in me growing long term.
Yeah, I think maybe the fact he was playing for an offense that fired their coordinator, Craig brought that up. I just thought he just looked not quite as good as I thought when I saw him coming out of high school. Of course, he's a young kid, so that can happen.
Well, and I think that you look, and first of all, I will say, I was not happy whatsoever with the way that Oklahoma treated him. One, I mean, look, he had growing pains at the beginning. I think that's fair to say. But I've never seen a program so publicly give up on a player of his pedigree before. He was the #1 player in the state of Texas, top 10 national recruit, and they basically kind of threw him to the wolves after he had like one bad game at Oklahoma. And then you look, and it turns out that this offense is just not very talented. The offensive line was really bad. They dealt with some major wide receiver injuries. Their running game never got going. It wasn't schemed very well, frankly. Like, there were so many things that were wrong at Oklahoma that had nothing to do with Jackson Arnold. And Oklahoma seemed perfectly content to kind of say, no, like, our quarterback just wasn't good enough. We're going to bench him, move in another direction. Well, it turns out going in another direction didn't help that much. So I still think he has a lot of talent. Again, though, I just feel like I wish that he had gone to a place that would be willing to invest long-term in him. I mean, the reality of, I could think you could almost make this case of like almost every major SEC school at this point is like, if you don't perform right away, they're going to kick you right out, just like Oklahoma did. I would have loved to see him end up in a place where maybe he has a little bit more time.
Speaking of Oklahoma, it seems like they've got their alternate plan. It's just a matter of if he pulls the trigger or not. And a lot of signs pointing towards John Mateer now in the portal, possibly landing at an Oklahoma. But Shahan, I think you know a good deal about him. Watched him this year. Very productive player, very exciting player. How much attention do you think he's getting? And do you think it's a kind of a foregone conclusion that Oklahoma and a reunion with Ben Arbuckle is the spot for him?
Well, it's definitely a heavy favorite. I think one complication is that Miami appears to have gotten into the mix. And if you know much about the former Washington State quarterback Cam Ward's recruitment process, they are no strangers to throwing some money around and some opportunity around. So I do think that he will end up at Oklahoma, but it is by no means a done deal at this point. He's a really good player. Like, I got to talk to Eric Morris, who recruited him to Washington State. At the time, he was actually committed to Central Arkansas. He had really no other major offers other than Washington State and New Mexico State. And obviously, he's developed into being a really good player there. He led the country with 44 touchdowns responsible for. He had 15 rushing touchdowns, which was the Washington State record. And that's what he brings to the table to a power conference team, is he's going to go in and be able to contribute both as a passer and as a runner as well. I think that Oklahoma probably needs somebody who can do both, especially since we don't really know what's going to happen with him at receiver. Now, at the same time, if you are John Mateer, I mean, you have your pick of the litter. You are the number one overall player in the transfer portal, according to 247 Sports. You can find yourself a little bit of a better situation. I talked about it with Jackson Arnold and stepping into a lot of pressure. I don't think that Oklahoma is necessarily too much pressure for John Mateer, but I do think that there are programs that are out there with openings that will have better options at receiver, have better options at offensive coordinator. We just don't know necessarily what this Oklahoma team is going to look like in 2025.
Shahan, are there any in the first round, which starts, of course, Friday and it's Saturday, of these games, Clemson, Texas, Tennessee, Ohio State, SMU, Penn State, Indiana, Notre Dame, which of those two, is it Tennessee, Ohio State, that's the biggest, what I call banger of two named teams and even two good teams that are playing each other?
Well, look, you look at all four have betting lines of more than a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the games are going to be a little closer than what they may appear. And I will say, I don't know if that Ohio State-Tennessee game is going to be one of them, though. I think that's going to be an incredibly low-scoring game. Two of the top 5 defenses in college football, and two offenses that really struggled when they went up against some of the better defenses in college football. So I think that Ohio State's going to eventually pull away with that game. The two that are most interesting to me, I'd say, I've got a close eye on SMU versus Penn State. I mean, look, Penn State is as unproven as any team in the country right now. Probably their second best win, or maybe their best win, arguably, is playing Oregon kind of close, which is, kind of what we said about Boise State as well. Well, SMU comes to town, and SMU has their own problems, certainly, but they've got an offense that does such a great job of taking advantage of opportunities behind quarterback Kevin Jennings. He's just one of those guys who extends plays. He turns 0-yard gains into 3-yard gains. And when you're going against a team like Penn State that really is very good defensively, I think that SMU has the ability to hang on to the ball and make things interesting. And on the other side, I don't think people realize how good SMU's passing defense is in 2024. They have one of the most fearsome pass rushers in the country, and I think it'll be an interesting matchup. The other one, too, just filled with storyline, especially for people in the state of Texas, Clemson versus Texas. A rematch, by the way, of the quarterbacks in the 2021 6A D1 state title game. Quinn Ewers was playing for South Lake Carroll, of course, and Cade Klubnik for Austin Westlake. I'll have a story on that later this week. Now, look, I mean, the reality is Texas is a much better team at this point than Clemson, but Clemson just has some playmakers on both sides of the ball. Barrett Carter at linebacker is one who comes to mind. Obviously, on offense, you talk about Klubnik, you talk about Bryant Wesco, the fantastic freshman receiver for them. And again, this is a team that ironically is the one who's been there and done that. Texas has not at this point. So I'll be fascinated to see how Dabo Swinney prepares for this one.
Were you hoping to see SMU in Texas? I was really hoping to see that as opposed, I mean, Clemson, Texas is going to be awesome, but I mean, come on, man. Like, they just flip them the spot, and we just saw the game the day before. I couldn't believe we didn't get that draw.
Yeah, I know. It would have been a lot of fun to have a chance to get that game. SMU has been waiting just for a stage and for a moment, especially when you compare them to other teams in the state of Texas, right? Like, I mean, they want the TCUs, the Baylors, the Texas A&Ms, and the Texases, of course. It would have been a lot of fun to get to see that matchup, but I will say I do feel like SMU matches up a little better with Penn State than they would have versus Texas.
Certainly, yeah. Shahan, elsewhere, I mean, you ran down all the different crazy stuff that's going on. The carousel's kind of slowed to a crawl. It's mostly position coaches and things like that sort of filling in the blanks now, but what did you make of just the big reunion of Rich Rodriguez and the West Virginia faithful, the big to-do at the end of last week with his introduction, and McAfee's there, and it just seems like there's definitely an electricity there. Whether it works out or not is the big question, but having seen it all kind of unfold, what do you make of maybe a renaissance in Morgantown, West Virginia?
Well, I'll say this. I think that if you wonder why Neil Brown got fired, the answer is that West Virginia has not been relevant his entire tenure. They won 9 games last year, but they didn't really beat anybody of note. They've actually lost 10 straight games against AP-ranked opponents. They're one of only 3 programs in the power conferences to not appear in the rankings in the AP Top 25 since 2019. And the reality is that's why he was fired. They want to be more relevant. And what could be more relevant than appearing on ESPN, on Pat McAfee's show, on being this giant reunion that everybody's talking about? And look, we don't know at this point whether Rich Rodriguez is going to be able to drag West Virginia back to the success that he had in the late 2000s. But this is a coach, by the way, when you talk about reunions, who this past year won Conference USA at Jacksonville State. He was very successful during his time at Arizona. Really, the only failure he has on his resume is at Michigan. And I think that was obviously just a little bit of a weird cultural fit in a lot of ways. So I don't know if Rich Rodriguez is prepared to kind of deal with the new world at West Virginia, but I can tell you this for certain. This program and this fan base has not been more united, excited, engaged in a very long time. And I think that for a program like West Virginia right now, that just has to be the first step.
Yeah, when we brought up that Neil Brown was most likely gone, and then of course he was, and then the search, we didn't know because we're not. It doesn't have to be you're from Morgantown, but there are certain places where you kind of need to be. And we have a lot of people in the chat, a lot of West Virginia fans. And initially it looked like it was not 100%. It was like maybe either way. And then it steamrolled. It absolutely steamrolled. And it does appear, as you said, that they're as united as you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting too, right? Both programs in the state of West Virginia ultimately changed head coaches, with Charles Huff going to Southern Miss from Marshall. And they kind of did a similar thing. They hired Tony Gibson, a West Virginian by birth, to be their head coach as well, the former defensive coordinator at NC State. So I think that there's something to be said at an estate like West Virginia, at a program like West Virginia, for people who really want to be there and really understand what it means and who really want to engage with the environment. I mean, obviously, our good friend Joey McGuire at Texas Tech, I think, has brought that in a big way as well. And you see the level of investment that can come with it. You can just sell a place better when you do truly want to be there. And so I think that for West Virginia, that's going to be a huge dynamic with Rich Rodriguez coming in. And the other thing, too, it's like, I mean, they haven't gotten to play a whole lot of fun football since Dana Holgorsen left in 2018. They haven't had these great performances. They haven't had these breakout stars on the offensive side of the ball. I think more than anything else, like if you're a West Virginia fan, the hope is that this is at least a little bit more fun.
Yeah, I think so. Last thing, and we appreciate your time, Shahan, is that we had Kalani Sitake on, and one of the things he talked about is that you cannot think you know the Big 12. Like they were an example this year. Colorado was an example this year. No one better than Arizona State and their example. And the history of teams rising from being poo-pooed like at the start of the year with rankings, whatever. What does make the Big 12 special, in your opinion, even though they may not have the name brands and the logos and the blue bloods?
Well, I think that when you look at the Big 12, this is a 16-team conference where all 16 teams are fully engaged. And you look across the rest of college football, I mean, I think that there are some programs who have resigned themselves to not being relevant, right? Like you look at, in the ACC yesterday, right? Wake Forest, their coach Dave Clawson steps down. They haven't seemed very committed long-term to long-term success on the football field. In the Big Ten, right? You have the Purdues, you have the Rutgers that just have no chance of contending at a high level. Well, I think that in this moment in the Big 12, everybody's like, well, you might as well try. I think that all 16 teams in the conference are there right now. I mean, you look at the teams that were picked to last place in the conference. Arizona State, of course, goes and wins the Big 12. You look at BYU, like you mentioned, picked 13th in the Big 12. Houston ended up winning 2 or 3 games. Like, there is not a team right now that isn't trying to figure it out. And one thing that I've loved about the Big 12 outside of Texas and Oklahoma for 25 years, essentially, is that this is a conference of strivers. It's a conference of people who really are willing to do what it takes to try and compete and contend and innovate. I think to the development of the air raid happening in the Big 12 in the 2000s. I think of the rise of the 3-3-5 defense under Matt Campbell in Iowa State. Like, I think that you always are going to have programs trying to stay ahead of the curve because everybody wants to win and everybody wants to figure out what's next. And that's not something that you get everywhere in college football.
Yeah, and they're scratching and clawing to do it, and it's kind of fun when they do. You're a Baylor grad, right?
Yes.
All right. Have you seen the new helmet?
I have. All
right, here, Garrett, you have a picture of it, right? It's a scripted Baylor written across the side, and I saw the reaction in a thread on SicEm365.com, and it seemed to me that the reaction, because Baylor fans can be very fickle about everything, that the reaction was very positive. What was it from your end?
Yeah, I mean, I got texts from people who are fans of like other programs in the Big 12 who are like, "Oh, those are really cool. Those are really cool helmets." I will say, I'm not the craziest about the gold, just like in general with helmets and jerseys, but I do think the design of these are really cool. Script is something that's really hard to mess up. I love when they did it on the basketball court. And by the way, their reveal video with Langston Love handing it over to Sawyer Robertson, that was a lot of fun. So I think they did a really good job, and I'm excited to see what they look like on the field.
Sean, we're off all of next week to get a little bit of decompression. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to you, young man. We appreciate it.
Merry Christmas to y'all.
All right, that's Shahan Jayaraja from CBS Sports. What do you think of those helmets, Craig?
I like them. I'm not the biggest, crazy fan of the script because I've just seen it done a lot here over the last year. So it's very much a trendy thing and very much like a cool throwback. So I like it, but I'm not like – I think I'm more just puzzled by them wearing yellow with it. Like if they had worn green, then I think I'd be much more on board. But the yellow and then playing LSU, who wears yellow helmets, is really confusing to me. So that means that LSU's probably going to wear white helmets, I would assume, because otherwise, why would you do that, right? Because it would just look kind of stupid.
So both teams have gold, and they're wearing yellow.
Well, the talk coming out of LSU is they're either going to wear the white or they're going to wear the purple. They've worn their white helmets more this year than they have any other season, even including on senior night, which upset a lot of people down there. So I wouldn't be surprised if they wore the white or the purple to counteract this.
See, I love the white LSU helmets and like the purple jerseys and the white pants. Like I love that look. I think that's a sick look. So yeah, I would think they probably wear white. Or purple, I guess, like you said. But, yeah, white's more of a mainstay for them. So that was just what was confusing to me initially. I like that they're doing stuff outside the box, though. And I think it's great to have people getting excited about stuff like that again. And they've done a lot of little tweaks to the uniforms from the anthracite, the all-black, the Sailor Bear helmet one week. And they've kind of made that more of a common thing at least once or twice a year. And so now you throw in the script lettering and – yeah, they've kind of checked all of the major boxes as far as alternate things you can do with the uniforms, and I think that's great.
They have pulled out some stuff in the last 12 months that has been much more accepted, and the reaction is much more positive than for a while. I think people were looking for. Dustin in the chat, I'm a non-Baylor fan, but I like the gold helmets instead of Baylor in cursive. I would have just went with BU. So
yeah, they have those. They have those. They have white. They have the yellow, gold, they have green as well, and then black or anthracite. So they have worn those, but yeah, that was just kind of what was puzzling to me was the yellow with that script. I would have, I think, preferred to see it on a white or green helmet, me personally. But hey, if you're a fan of yellow, I'm sure you love them, and if LSU wears their whites, then that won't be as much of a clash as I'm anticipating.
Is that a throwback look?
No.
I was wondering when I first saw that. Okay.
I mean, the script lettering's kind of in some ways a throwback for certain schools. It's become, I mean, A&M wore script helmets earlier this year. I did not like theirs. I thought they looked way too much like a New Mexico State or something because the Aggies on the side, it just looked like a different program. But yeah, you've seen a few programs break that out. And I mean, where Baylor got it from in their whole promotion of the reveal was from basketball. That's who had it first, was men's basketball had it on their jerseys, and they just took that and slapped it on the side of the helmets. So I like the way that they promoted that and kind of carried it over. But yeah, you see that I think Texas with like the newer font they have over the last few years, the script, I think that probably played into some of the popularity of it as well, of just that becoming a cooler look for teams across the country. But yeah, I don't think that's a throwback like a Sailor Bear is.
Obviously, Baylor in the stretches and when they were really, really good, and they had the anthracite and they had the chrome, whatever. That was hard to kind of match. But over most of the time, it's been the BU, the interlocking BU. That people could even argue about whether or not how it should be interlocked. They changed that up a little bit too. But there we are with the cursive on the side, the script on the side that they brought up for the game against LSU on December 31st. When we come back, Craig Smoak and Off the Radar around the corner at 5:30, Hall of Fame columnist John McClain, and this is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Marcos.com online, and they have all sorts of specials. I'm going to dial it up here and just to see if it's changed much since the last time I talked. And they have the 2025 Countdown Feast, $20.25 for you to order and enjoy or go pick up if you want. Large one-topping pizza, new chocolate center squares, and cheesy bread. 2025, $20.25. The 2025 Countdown Feast. Triple pepperoni magnifico still at $11.99. You can use the code word triple pep. Go online, order that again, have it delivered, or pick it up. Marco's Pizza, pizza lovers get it. 5 locations in the Waco area, including Belmead, China Spring, Robinson Hewitt, and also Woodway. Bob Mock, the owner. Marco's Pizza, marcos.com. Pizza lovers get it.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local, is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
Welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports, taking a look at grab bag of stories outside of the normal discussion, and we'll still dabble in college football from time to time, and I will in this segment as well. But, it's taking a look at some stuff outside of the transfer portal and coaching changes and all of that, and let's get into some of the stories from the past few days, and that includes just last night, Monday Night Football, pair of really not great games involving a lot of not very good teams. The Vikings are a good team, but they defeat the Bears last night. And my big complaint from this one was those Vikings uniforms sucked.
Thank you. They were awful.
Thank you as a uniform aficionado.
I didn't see it.
They were all white, which is like their winter white. I think there's a different term that they use for it, but something along the lines of winter white. And they wore their whites. They're all white, which is a new look for them. And obviously Minnesota, I mean, they're known for purple, right?
Oh.
Purple helmets, the white Viking horns on the side. So these were white helmets with the white horns. There was like no purple on the uniforms. The jerseys were all white. The pants were all white. The only markings on them were like silver. And whoever designs the uniforms at Nike, like, it just felt like somebody drew a rough sketch of like the very earliest stage of what the uniform will eventually look like. Didn't color it in. Didn't add any details. They just put like a really preliminary sketch, and they said, "All right, I'm done." And they were just like, they didn't add color to it. They
You can't
didn't
even
finish
really see the Viking horn.
You couldn't see the Viking horn on TV.
Little trim, very little trim.
If
around
you
it.
didn't have like super HD big screen right in front of your face, you just saw a all white helmet on your television because the Viking horn was so thinly drawn.
It's one of the great
that it didn't show up very well. And as a matter of fact, they looked, and I wasn't the only one that thought this because I saw quite a few people. I was thinking, like, am I tripping? Am I just being an old guy? Like, these uniforms stink. Turns out I was part of the majority in thinking that way. But not only could you not see the horns based on your television and the camera angle, and not only were they just plain Jane white, but a lot of people point out they look like the Colts. And sure enough, late in that game, I'm not really paying attention because it's not that interesting of a game, and they scored. I'm going, oh, Jonathan Taylor scored. And I go, wait a second. That's not the Colts I'm watching. That's the Vikings. I had to remind myself because they look so much like the Colts. But so, Garrett, you didn't like them either.
No, I hated them. And then I want to go like Thursday night, I believe, when the Packers were playing Seattle. It was the same thing. Like they had the all-white Packers with that weird color clash with the green for the Seahawks. I'm with you. I don't know what it is. I like cool uniforms and changing it up, but that was a bad
It almost looked like if you were, of course, there was a little purple. The numbers were purple. but it could have been Penn State.
Yeah, it looks.
I did not watch the game last night.
It looked like the Colts to me. When somebody pointed that out, I couldn't get that out of my head. To the point that I'm telling you, late in that game, it's what Cam Akers, I think, scored. And I'm going, hey, Jonathan Taylor. I thought I was watching the Colts. I legitimately thought I was watching the Colts for like 30 seconds. And I was like, oh, yeah, no, I read that on Twitter. So anyways, Minnesota wins that game. And it was a good game. But, man, the uniforms, I want to know what that designer got paid to design that, because you basically just took an eraser to a majority of the uniform, left it as plain as you possibly could, and then said, like, behold, this cutting-edge new school design. And I just felt like the old man watching these uniforms. But I know what you mean about the Seahawks. Those bright green uniforms are not the best in the world, but at least that had some color to it. Those Vikings uniforms were absolutely terrible last night, but they did end up getting the win. And, the Bears just continued to struggle. And
Minnesota's 12-2, the quietest 12-2 I've ever known in my life.
Yeah, and with Sam Darnold at quarterback, it's been a rejuvenation of his career there in Minnesota that you didn't see coming necessarily. Meanwhile, Caleb Williams just kind of plodding along, and the Bears just not very good. Obviously, they're going to have to make a coaching hire here this offseason. But, yeah, my main thought from watching that was like, boy, I thought Caleb Williams was really going to be a lot more exciting in his debut season, and wow, those uniforms were absolutely terrible. But meanwhile, on the other Monday night game, which is really why I brought this up, was not only my Colts rant, but also you had the Falcons over the Raiders, and that was an awful football game in its own right. Atlanta wins. Bijan Robinson, he's always fun to watch. The Falcons clearly have some things to continue figuring out, but still, they got the win, and that figuring out includes Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's at a point in his career where to hear the commentary crew, which was Louis Riddick and also Dan Orlovsky, so clearly those guys have a lot of opinions. Those are two of ESPN's top pro analysts, and Orlovsky in particular on the quarterback position. I mean, the way that they were in some ways dogging Kirk Cousins, but also just talking so negatively, not to him or personally about him, but just in general, the state of his play and what the Falcons need to do moving forward. It was not a good look for Kirk Cousins, that broadcast listening to it. And so they've got to figure something out. And you wonder if old Michael Penix, when they drafted him last year, if they didn't see sort of the writing on the wall, despite giving Cousins that massive deal for what nobody could understand any real reason why. And then you go draft Penix, but if Kirk Cousins continues to play this way, I think it's sooner rather than later that Michael Penix pick makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, Atlanta, they seem like earlier this year, it looked like they had a nice little pulse. They've got some playmakers and stuff. It just doesn't – I don't know what's going on.
No, they've got some good players. Drake London's a really good player. Bijan Robinson, obviously. But, yeah, I think for all the confusion about that pick of Michael Penix. I think that it's starting to be clear that was maybe the right thing that they did, actually, and they will have him back there sooner rather than later, because it did feel like we were watching basically the last rites of Kirk Cousins listening to that broadcast last night. But that was another kind of takeaway in watching the football that we do have at our disposal now that college football is broken up a little bit into bowl season. But the other thing about it was during that Falcons-Raiders game was not only were they talking about Kirk Cousins and how terrible he is and everything like that, but a lot of talk on the other side about those Las Vegas Raiders. And the stadium's nice, the city's cool, but the team absolutely sucks. And so they've got some decisions to make, including at head coach. You wonder how long of a leash Antonio Pierce has, but it got me to thinking. This is why I've really wound all the way to here is they started talking about the draft and the Raiders and the fact that they're, jostling for the first overall pick and who's going to end up getting them. Will it be them? Will it be the Giants? But I'm starting to wonder, seeing Travis Hunter as the number one pick in a lot of mock drafts, but if you're the Raiders, if you're the Giants, don't you kind of have to draft Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah, you need you do. You have to have somebody to throw it if, in fact, you have Travis Hunter, who's going to, whatever he's going to do in the NFL, which I think will be a little bit of both. If you think that Shedeur Sanders is going to be an efficient to prolific quarterback in the NFL, and you have one of the top 3 to 4 picks, you have to take him.
And honestly, watching him, he's not a dual threat. Like, he can run if he needs to, but he's not a runner. He's not a runner. But he is among the absolute, if not the best, in terms of avoiding a rush and in terms of avoiding a sack and keeping plays alive. And look no further than the Baylor game.
He didn't avoid many sacks early in the year, but he got better because the offensive line. I know what you're talking about.
But he is elusive.
Yeah, he is, absolutely.
Especially given the hand that he was dealt. So I was just sitting there watching that last night, and there's all these mock drafts I keep seeing of Travis Hunter at number 1, and I'm sitting there listening to them talk, and I'm just thinking, I think Shador's going to be the damn number 1 overall pick because the Raiders can get better with Travis Hunter, but you desperately need a quarterback. Like, desperately you need a quarterback there. And same thing with the Giants. Like, Travis Hunter can make you better, but I think you desperately
is he rated higher than Cam Ward?
Shador?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's obvious you're asking about Shador. I don't know across the board. I don't think there's a one go-to spot, so I don't know about that.
I'm going to look up what Dane Brugler has said.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure if you look at 10 of them, that 8 of them might be the same, and there might be a couple of outliers, so I wouldn't be surprised. But the quarterback class, as it stands right now, I mean, you're looking at Shador Sanders, you're looking at Cam Ward, and those are pretty much your surefire bets. And those could very well be number 1 and number 2, although Travis Hunter could slide in there at either one of those spots as well. But then after that, guys, are you sold on Carson Beck?
No.
As the NFL star quarterback?
No.
How about this? How about this drop-off? Because we don't know Quinn Ewers' decision yet, right? But they flashed up there the graphics last night, and they're starting to talk about this quarterback position. They're talking about how much, Desmond Ritter's out there playing for the Raiders, and he was doing some fine stuff, but he's clearly not the guy. But they start talking about Shador, and they start talking about Cam, and then they throw up the graphic. And after Shador Sanders and Cam Ward, you get to Carson Beck, and you know who it goes to?
Quinn Ewers.
No, because he's not official yet.
Oh, okay.
Well, I guess, you know what? That's fine because the other guys. But Jalen Milroe.
Really?
Which, if you were to think about that a year ago, right? When he first started, taking over the reins a couple years ago, and mostly last year, of the reins at quarterback of Alabama, would you have ever, especially early on in your right mind, thought, that's a first-round NFL quarterback talent right there?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I don't know what – I don't want to get stuck in that thing where he's a great athlete. But
right.
At times he really can wing it, but I don't know.
But that's the quarterback class, basically.
Mock draft by Dane Brugler, who we have great respect for, doesn't mean he's always right. The only quarterbacks that they have in the first round – and it's in the top 2 or 3 picks is Shador Sanders and Cam Ward.
Yeah, I mean that's my point. Is if
Someone
you need a
will
quarterback,
jump because they always do at that position.
But the drop off is so massive that you go from Cam Ward and Shador Sanders, which you can interchange those guys depending on whose opinion you're getting. But Quinn Ewers, I mean, he's not going to start at Texas next year. We can all agree on that. So it's either the NFL or it's the transfer portal for him. And in some rankings, he's the number 3 overall quarterback prospect. I don't think he's done anything this year that you're like, that dude's surefire. He's got a great arm, but
do you feel comfortable? All right, our team is Washington. The quarterback's there, Jaden Daniels.
We got our quarterback.
We got a quarterback. But if you're a team who needs it, do you feel comfortable enough if your franchise needed it to draft Quinn Ewers? I do not.
Not highly.
There's something, I don't know because I'm not
first round, top pick.
Analytics guy. I'm not like X's and O's, and they look at the size of the hands and all. There are times that Quinn Ewers can throw the prettiest damn pass you could ever see.
Oh yeah.
His touch and I'm talking about even deep outs, etc. And then there's times when it looks like he doesn't know where he's going.
Well, there's times where he nearly single-handedly cost Texas a game.
He almost
with
did
a poor decision,
even against A&M.
Right. I mean, he did that multiple times this year, where they were just fortunate enough that their defense was so good, or they made a play somewhere else, or that. How many times this year, it was at least twice, right, where he's basically got benched or was close to getting benched, and then all of a sudden, that spark lit, and he's like, oh, no, I'm going to go out there and make some plays at the end of the game, and he would. But, yeah, he was not great this year the way that you look at a Cam Ward or a Shador Sanders. So that was just something that stood out to me last night, was the massive drop-off that you have, because we will start talking draft, and we'll have that interchanging, obviously, with college football and all the crossover there. But it's Cam Ward and Shador Sanders, and then maybe nobody else in the first round. So I think if you're the Raiders or the Giants at the top of the draft, like unless you were like, hey, let's get Travis Hunter and then we're going to go get Quinn Ewers or Carson Beck in the second round, you almost have to go the quarterback route. So that'll just be an interesting discussion over these next few months. But there's a very real path to where Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders are like the number 1 overall pick, and it's not Travis Hunter, although we'll see how that goes.
The kid from LSU, the offensive lineman's a top 5 name. But as far as those 3, you could pick them in any particular order.
Yeah, and I don't think Quinn Ewers turning pro changes that at all. I don't think Jalen Milroe turning pro changes at all. But how crazy is that Jalen Milroe is a top 5 NFL draft quarterback prospect, just given where he was kind of viewed a couple of years ago when he first started taking over the reins.
Did you guys see how big Cam Ward used to be when he was in high school? Unless he had a flak jacket on, he's a big dude when he came in high school to Incarnate Word.
Part of why he maybe ended up in Incarnate Word initially was just
I thought just a flash of maybe 20 seconds of a couple of highlights, and I don't even know when it was because I didn't get a chance to even turn my TV on. He looked like he was a pretty big guy. He's turned himself into a hell of a quarterback.
Yeah, I have no idea on that. I don't remember seeing any footage from his high school days that stands out. I'm sure I have, though. But, yeah, I mean, I'm searching for answers as to how he ended up in Incarnate Word with clearly a guy who might go number 1 overall in the NFL draft just 4 or 5 short years later. But here we are, and he's made the most of it and I guess slimmed down, and that's probably helped him a great deal, I would imagine, as well. But, yeah, that was some NFL draft for you. It's going to be very interesting to see how that shakes out, but definitely going to have some, for those Big 12 members of the audience, definitely going to have some Big 12 flavor there at the top with 2 Colorado Buffaloes definitely having a say in who the top picks are going to be. Meanwhile, outside of that, let's see here. I don't know if you saw this or not. I definitely know we didn't bring this up last week, but I saw this and I wanted to hold it over because I think it's a great thing that RG3 is going to be a part of the Netflix Christmas Day broadcast for their NFL debut, and obviously had the job at ESPN a year ago, lost that job, and I was doing his podcast, right? And I haven't really kept up with the day-to-day of what Robert's been up to and everything, but I did see that note, and I think that's great that he's going to be back in the broadcast booth and will be a part of the Netflix Christmas Day live stream. It's his first job since the ESPN release, and so I think him getting back in there's got to feel pretty good for Robert. We're obviously a big fan of his, and he had a tweet. Of course he did. Man loves social media, but he had a tweet with the Idris Elba "We're Back" meme, and threw a Netflix cap on Stringer Bell from The Wire, who I mostly know Idris Elba as. But he's going to be a part of their team of analysts doing studio coverage, so I actually won't be in the booth, but a part of that doubleheader. So I'm excited for Robert Griffin III to hopefully get a lifeline back into broadcasting, because I do think it fits him to a degree.
Yeah, he was laid off, and it just seemed like nobody, again, I don't know if he was getting a lot of money while he was laid off because of a contract, but I think this will be good for him that he's had a little bit of buffer time. He's done a podcast that's got to be pretty popular. I'm happy as hell for him, though, that he gets a chance to get back into an NFL broadcast.
Yep, so he is a part of a group that will also include Kay Adams, also Mina Kimes, Manti Te'o. Man, imagine it back then during his whole debacle of, like, he's going to be in the broadcast booth one day. You just wait after an NFL career of his own right. But good for him. He'll be a part of that Christmas NFL studio show as well. So, RG3, Kay Adams, Manti Te'o, and Mina Kimes. Congratulations to Robert Griffin III. And then I did want to get your thoughts on this. What did you make of the Devondre Campbell situation? The 49ers have suspended him for 4 games because rather than cutting him, this is much more of a punishment because he doesn't get any money. And he also can't be picked up by a team, especially a team that could be revving up for the playoffs. So
he quit on his teammates.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, I saw where there were maybe 1 or 2 members in the media that wanted to say, well, wait a minute here. We don't know what he's going through.
Oh, come on.
Listen, I know we always want to have some sort of default about what people might be going through. Then tell your damn team. Tell your coach. Tell your general manager. Tell your teammates. He quit. Now, remember Vernon Davis? Did he not do that with the 49ers and Mike Singletary? And I don't know, but he turned out to be one hell of a football player.
That was not Vernon Davis. Vernon Davis was an incredible tight end. You're talking about Vontae Davis.
No, I think I'm talking about when Vernon Davis was with the 49ers and Singletary was the head coach. Wasn't he out of Maryland?
Oh, I'm thinking of Vontae Davis.
Yeah. Well, maybe he was another one that
he was definitely a guy that retired at halftime. Vontae Davis retired for the Bills at halftime.
No, I know that one. I do know that
That's
one.
what I'm talking
You're
about.
right, Smokey. Vernon Davis was a tight end for the 49ers and basically just quit. Or Singletary sent him to the locker room, one or the other. Turned out to be a hell of a player. But yeah, Vontae Davis quit. I just don't have you go. You don't. I want to see you don't go to war with your football players. You go out on the field, and everybody around you, you have to trust him 100%. You can never trust him, I think, at least on that team with that roster ever again.
Yeah. So this was 2008 that you're referring to. Vernon Davis didn't choose to go to the locker room. Singletary benched him and then sent him there for the rest of the game. So that's a different. So
he didn't quit on his teammates. He was told to leave. Yeah.
No, he wasn't. I think that's a very big distinction to make. This wasn't Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown's a better comparison. Quitting in the middle of a game. Clearly, he had thought that out, and that was how his career came to a close. But the Vernon Davis was more of Singletary. Just seemed like he was fed up. But that Devondre Campbell thing, man. Do you check social media for a while after that? I mean, you made that decision, but that was just bizarre to see, even though it's not the first time we've seen that. So interesting to see how the 49ers handled that. So he won't be getting any money as a result of being suspended. His locker has been emptied, and he won't be able to be picked up by another team. So apparently, according to some of the players, there had been some signs that he wasn't acting as normal self, or maybe was already showing some signs that maybe he had something up his sleeve, or just, something was off. Clearly he was pissed because he didn't feel like he deserved to be on the bench and not starting, despite the fact that one of your better players was coming back from an injury, and he was disrespected enough in his mind to walk out of a game when his team called upon him. And so he's going to be one of those guys that we talk about, in the future. I guess if another incident like this happens, or you just talk about weird moments during an NFL game, guys quitting, that's what we'll remember Devondre Campbell for when it comes to his entire career, because I don't have any other memories of him other than that.
I don't like the fact that he put a towel over his head so nobody could actually see him or whatever. Maybe he was a little bit embarrassed by what he was doing, or just out of bad. Bottom line, he can't play for them anymore. Suspend him. Maybe there'll be some sort of a figure something out. But John Lynch apparently confronted him, the GM, the former player. That didn't go over well, whether he's a former player as a safety like Lynch or a guy that never played football.
Yeah, that was just a bizarre situation.
Yeah, I hated to see that. And the first thing you wonder is what caused it, but then you cannot trust him if you're a teammate.
Well, there's
players. Kittle said that.
Well, yeah, Kittle said that. Various other players in the locker room said that the past couple of days. So, yeah, he was suspended, and so that was the best way the 49ers could go about handling that, because it handcuffs him, and he won't be able to just hit the streets and go sign up somewhere else. Although I would have been curious to know, what kind of interest would there have been in Devondre? Would somebody out there go yeah, we'll still take a flyer? I doubt it, but we won't know because he won't have that opportunity. And a final thing here, I did want to make mention real quickly of tonight. You got Iowa State basketball taking on UConn. That ought to be a heck of a game in the Hall of Fame Women's Showcase. Iowa State women 9-3 taking on the number 4 UConn Huskies. So that's just a little something that I came across in terms of schedules and things that you can maybe look forward to tonight. But I wanted to close out with this note, and it was from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram and Mac Engel. We've talked so much about the coaching carousel and the transfer portal and all these people moving around, and I brought it up a couple of times, but there was almost weirdly little discussion, at least outside of Fort Worth, in my opinion, about Jeremiah Donati leaving to go to South Carolina. Not that him leaving some big shock. He's not bolted down to staying in Fort Worth for his whole life or anything like that. But he did talk to Mac Engel of the Star-Telegram, and I just thought it was interesting to hear him say why he decided to leave. He said, "The reason I am leaving has nothing to do with TCU. This decision is not about TCU. This is about an opportunity. It's about a brand, a location, about a league. It's a challenge I am ready for. It's in a good place, and I like the trajectory it's on. This one just felt right. I have had other opportunities that were easy no's. This wasn't. If I could do this all over again, I would in a heartbeat. It's not lost on me that TCU took a flyer on me. I was a younger AD with no experience as an AD when they gave me the job. If I could have signed a lifetime contract that would guarantee my happiness at TCU, I'd have done it, but that's not the way it works. And he had also been flirted with and approached by USC, if you'll remember, previously to that. But that was Jeremiah Donati, now South Carolina AD, at least talking about his move to South Carolina from TCU, and I just wanted to throw that in there because it was something we'd kind of brought up but never really delved into. But yeah, TCU will continue searching for their AD, and I'm very curious to see who that is because that's a big-time program, and that's a big-time job to fill up for the Frogs.
Well, good for Jeremiah getting what he wants, and TCU hopefully being able to get who they need as they move forward. There's so many changes. If it's not the head coach, it's the AD. If it's not the AD, it's the men's basketball coach. It's crazy. And good luck to TCU and they'll find somebody. They found Del Conte, and then of course Donati, so they'll be fine.
Donati came from knowing Del Conte, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, when we come back, just around the corner, we'll have John McClain with the Hall of Fame columnist. But there's a couple of other notes to get to. One on Josh Cameron in the Football Writers Association. A note about a young man that played high school football here locally, and he was honored by the, the Conference USA. And then a video of a player who played high school football here, and what you love to see, who's getting a lot of offers from SEC schools, just a junior in the Waco area. This is 365 Sports. Pioneer Steel and Pipe. They build things or help you build things. They have what you need to build things, commercial or real estate. And then, of course, metal, steel, pipe, and all of every other thing you need from nuts and bolts to gadgets and more. And they've been doing that since 1943. So imagine all of how things have changed in the pipe, steel, and the metal building business, and they know it. They also know the contractors. If you're going to build something yourself, maybe it's it's something out back, a shed or a metal building, something you're going to build, or you need somebody else to do it for you, but you want to get it done. And they know the contractors you can rely on so things don't get muddied up and take delay after delay after delay. They've been in business since 1943. Their location is east of I-35. If you're headed north and you're coming through Waco, you take east of Loop 340 and Highway 6, it's on your right. If you're headed south, you can go either left or wait till you get to the bottom part of Waco and get to the left. It's east of I-35, Loop 340, Highway 6, Pioneer Boys, online at pioneerboys.com.
The wrap-up the year sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco has huge savings. Get a 2024 Wagoneer or Grand Wagoneer Series 3 and get a whopping dealer discount of $15,000 plus 3.9% financing for 72 months. That's right, 3.9% for 72 months and dealer discount of $15,000. Or drive off in a 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland or Limited 4XE and save $15,000. Plus, see if you qualify for a $7,500 federal tax deduction. Hurry, only at Allen Samuels in Waco. First responders get an extra $500.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
All right, here we go on 365 Sports. We take you up until 6, so about 35, 40 minutes left in the show. Thanks to those who are watching what we do or listening to what we do on Sikkim 365 app. Also, there's a nice contingent of you. We appreciate it. That is on Sikkim 365 Sports YT on Twitter. And then, of course, right here on YouTube, which is 365 Sports Afternoons from 3 until 6. Here's a few more stories to get to. The first one, Friday night football for Notre Dame coming up with the college football playoffs against Indiana. How rare is a Friday night game in college football in South Bend? The last time the Irish had a home game on a Friday is November 30th, nearly 124 years ago. No, yes, in 1900, when they beat Chicago Physicians and Surgeons. There's some great names back in the day, 5-0 at Cartier Field. The last time they played a Friday night game in South Bend, a college football game, was in 1900. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So I guess we'll have to turn the clock back to zeros and restart that countdown. But that's interesting, and don't know much about how Chicago Physicians and Surgeons fared after 1900. I wonder how long that continued on their program there. But clearly the two went on separate trajectories. Notre Dame as a football program and the Chicago medical community, they're doing probably pretty well in their own lane, but not the football lane any longer. So yeah, much different time period now.
I'm Googling them. They opened their first year was in 1896. You know who they had the first place team in their conference happened to be Carthage, which is not just in East Texas and Texas, but that's interesting. The 1896 Chicago Physicians and Surgeons football team. Also, college football note, Alex Grinch has been around the block a few times. Started out, of course, at one point got a name for himself at Washington State, then Ohio State, then Oklahoma, then USC, went with Lincoln Riley. That didn't work out. Wisconsin, co-defensive coordinator last year. He now has been hired as the Scott Frost defensive coordinator at UCF.
Well, it's a big spot to fill for Frost on that staff. I don't know. I haven't really searched out or had time to search out sort of the response from the UCF community. I would imagine, though, it's mixed at best because Alex Grinch's reputation at this point, at least in this corner of the map, has not been the best in terms of how that Oklahoma job worked out in particular. So, I think Scott Frost knows what he's doing, and I think probably has a pretty good idea of what life in the Big 12 is going to be like. I don't think Alex Grinch is some bum coach by any means. So, hey, we'll give it a shot and see how it works out. But I'm an Oklahoma fan, so I don't have the greatest thoughts. I don't think, wow, what a incredible hire for them. I'd have different memories. So, I'm not blown away by that by any means, but I'm willing to be open-minded, and we'll see what he can do.
Here are some responses. I just went on Twitter and in that little search bar, UCF, Alex Grinch. Here's UCFsports.com message board. Gross. I hate it. Frost found his 2026 fall guy. Well, at least Grinch is not Frost, butt buddy. And then the reactions have been kind of like the images of, really?
Yeah, I think it's a very underwhelming hire. So I'm right there on board with a lot of those folks.
The last name of Frost and a guy named Grinch during Christmas and the holidays at UCF.
Hey, I mean, we'll see if he can't find some more theme names to add on, have the whole Christmas staff there. But, yeah, that's unique, especially the time of year we're talking about this. But, yeah, he's kind of like the Grinch for UCF fans, that's for sure. I got them feeling that way because I don't think there's a lot of excitement because of what's happened the last few years, and that's understandable. There's not a reason to get too excited about this. You're just going to have to trust the process. and hope that Scott Frost, knows what he's doing, and that Alex Grinch is going to be a much better coach than he was when you saw him at maybe some of his low points, particularly the most high profile there at Oklahoma and then USC afterwards, where obviously they all left in the middle of the night, literally left in the middle of the night to sneak off to Los Angeles from Norman. And he was a part of that whole cavalcade of joining Lincoln Riley out there. And much like with a lot of others, the Oklahoma fan base definitely kept their eyes on and tabs on those guys, and loved watching Alex Grinch not do much different with the Trojans, and subsequently move on a little bit since then. So yeah, I think the reaction's probably the same for most people. And this is not, why would you, unless there's just a part of his resume that I'm missing out on, some connection that I don't know about, I don't know why you'd be too over the moon over this. But again, you've got to just trust that Scott Frost knows what he's doing, and he's hiring the right guy. So we'll see.
There's one guy on Twitter asking Grok, please list the pros to bringing Coach Grinch to UCF. And all of, like the experience and high-level programs, he has. Proven ability to turn around defenses. He might turn them around, but can he sustain it? Recruiting skills, I don't know. I saw Zachariah Branch was the highest-rated recruit when he was at USC, and he was more of a offensive threat and a return guy. Familiarity with the Big Ten and Pac-12. All right. Rice promoting legendary high school coach John Kay. Remember, we had Scott Abel on a week or two ago and asked about him. He was at North Shore. They won a lot of state championships. He now has been promoted to be the defensive coordinator at Rice. And now on the staff, stays on the staff. Scott Abel said he would keep him on the staff, but now given the defensive coordinator's position.
Yeah, I mean, I'll trust you on the high school football news here.
No, he's a great, a short amount of time. Story about him. He lived in Detroit, I think. When we had him on, Garrett, on the podcast, He lived in Detroit, but wanted to coach at the best level in high school. And there are some states that do that. So he had just got on a plane and flew into Houston. Got a job with, I don't know where it was before, North Shore. Eventually worked himself up the ladder and won multiple state championships. He was 117 and 18 in high school. Doesn't mean it translates, but this guy knows the area around Houston.
Well, they could have used him, this past weekend? Was that North Shore? Did they get beat this past weekend?
Yeah, they lost to Westlake 35-10.
Yeah, so they could have maybe used some of that old magic there. But, yeah, I was surprised to see how lopsided of a score that was. And for those that don't know, the Texas State Championships start, tomorrow?
Tomorrow with the 6-man schools and then 1 2A school.
So we got to figure out a way, guys, to have the TVs set up here whenever Paul gets back so that we have some state championships to watch, because it's that time of year. So if we can figure out a way to do that, that'd be awesome, because we'll have that going on for the next 4 days. But
Wednesday through Saturday.
That's or 5 days. But that's cool to see. Anytime there's former high school coaches that are kind of working their way up the ranks, whether it be a position coach like that or, a Jeff Traylor or GJ. Well, GJ didn't coach high school, did he? I'm just thinking about him playing for Jeff Traylor.
I don't think he ever did, no.
But Jeff Traylor, Joey McGuire, obviously another example of that. Gus Malzahn as well. So, yeah, it's always cool
Andy
to see
Reid.
that. Yeah.
All right, so this is pretty cool. La Vega High School, which is like maybe 5 to 8 minutes from here. We did their game back in 2000, I think it was 15 or whatever it was. They won their first ever state championship. Unbelievable program. Have had a great run. So Jabari Thornton is a junior wide receiver who has received numerous offers from big boy schools throughout the country. He went over after the game to talk to the quarterback who's at Wimberley. Cody Stover, who had an amazing game. La Vega won this game 62-35, but there's a video of him going over to the sideline to console the quarterback who was sitting there with his dad, and he said on his Twitter feed, "That's a dog." And I thought that was pretty cool. You don't see that much, so I wanted to show the video. And also the fact that Jabari Thornton is getting a lot of interest from college teams around the country. Also, Josh Cameron, Baylor, named second-team punt returner. Football Writers Association All-American team. I was surprised he didn't win or didn't get a couple more of those, like all Big 12, at least mentioned as a punt returner, which I don't think he was. He's a heck of a wide receiver.
He was second team, I feel like.
Big 12?
I'm pretty sure he was Big 12. Yeah, or maybe I'm misremembering. There's so many of those teams, but I want to say he was at least like second team punt returner, but maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking of a different team than you are because there are multiple teams. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the AP, the Big 12. Of course, there's Dave Campbell's and there's a lot of others. Here's one other note, college note. Sam Houston State, they're going to find a new coach, Casey Keeler. They'll probably have somebody you'd think by next week at the latest. The young man on the top row to the left, we've had him on this show. His name's Kavion Gaither. He played football right next to where La Vega is at Conley High School. Great young man named first-team linebacker when the All-Conference Awards came out for Conference USA.
Yeah, so you were talking about the AP because on the All Big 12, the official All Big 12, he's first-team Josh Cameron return man. So I guess you're thinking of the AP, and he wasn't mentioned there, but he was All Big 12 first team. So
well, he should be. Yeah, he had a really good year.
Well, so maybe they just had it differently on the AP for whatever reason. But Kavion Gaither is a guy who I kind of hoped in some ways would maybe really set Huntsville on fire and then loop his way back to Waco and play some linebacker for Dave Aranda or something, but I guess that's probably not in the cards. Either way, he's been super successful, and he's carved out a great career down there, and he's been from what I've been able to gather, pretty much a mainstay as a leader and a playmaker and all the things that if you know Kavion Gaither, you're not surprised by, but he's pretty much been that guy since he went down there. And so, yeah, it's crazy how time flies that he's seeing the end of his career coming up, but he's really carved out a great role for himself, and I think probably made a lot of friends and acquaintances down there in Huntsville because that's Kavion Gaither. He's a guy that's very easy to root for.
And finally, you mentioned Donati and TCU. Congratulations to a friend of the show, Jeremiah Dickey, has received a contract extension, $75,000 signing bonus, retention bonuses, housing allowances, and more, compensation of at least $600,000. We've known Jeremiah. He was a right-hand man with Mack Rhodes in, I believe, Akron, and then Houston, and then also here at Baylor, and now what he's done with Boise State and what a year it's been for them.
Well, I think that was probably coming either way when you have a runner-up to the Heisman Trophy and your football program makes the college football playoff. I think you're pretty much due for a new contract at that point at a school like Boise or at a school like Ohio State. That would get you probably a new contract if you hadn't just received one. So that seems like a no-brainer there. I also think that it does loop back into the fact that that TCU story I was talking about with the quotes from Jeremiah Donati, it did make mention of some of the possible candidates, but I hadn't seen an updated list, so I wasn't going to mention those guys because it's like 5 or 6 days old at this point. But who do you think one of the names brought up was?
Yep, Jeremiah Dickey.
Jeremiah Dickey, yep. And it would have made a lot of sense, and that would have been a great hire for TCU. But obviously, Boise State getting it done, and I think that's a smart move on their part to be prudent and go and give him that extension. It's obviously well-deserved, and they're experiencing unprecedented highs right now. So there's still more out there to take a bite out of, go win a playoff game, but he's done a great job there, and I wasn't at all surprised to see that maybe a TCU would have interest, and he's going to be a name, no matter what contract he signs in Boise, Idaho, he's going to be a name that you hear brought up for a lot of big AD jobs in the next few years.
I didn't do this yesterday because I wasn't here yesterday. A lot of you have asked me. I told you I would give you my Heisman ballot. I did pick Ashton Jeanty 1, Travis Hunter Jr. 2, and Dylan Gabriel was 3. There was no doubt who was going to be 1 and 2 on my ballot as far as in one order or the other, but it was something that I debated for quite some time. And if you look at the final results, and congratulations to Travis Hunter Jr., what an amazing player. I mean, 95 of all ballots, 95% voted for for Jeanty, 93 for Travis Hunter. Either one of these two, I still, that blows me away that somebody didn't have, and I know there's some regionality and whatever, that many people, 3 to 5% of all voters did not have one or the other on their ballot.
I don't know if that's 5 people or if it's 500
900
people.
and some voters.
Okay, so whatever, again, we know I don't do math, right? So whatever that is.
10% of 950 voters would be 95.
Strip them of their votes. If you don't have Ashton Jeanty or Travis Hunter on your Heisman finalist ballot, unless you turned in 2 names and 2 names alone, and even then it's still not even really all that excusable, you don't deserve to have a vote. Because somebody like myself, I'd never politic for myself, but I would be much better actual watcher of the game and appreciator of things outside of my region, then whatever yahoos are not putting Ashton Genty on their ballot or Travis Hunter on their ballot, you don't deserve to have a vote. And I'm sure somebody probably in their head somewhere is, fighting the good fight, being anti-Dion or anti-non-Power 5 or whatever reason you could possibly have to leave either one of those guys off your ballot. But that is ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. If there was anybody who left both of them off there, that should be automatic. That should be immediate termination of any voting privileges for the Heisman Trophy Award. I think they need to cut some of the fat anyways, personally, but that always boggles my mind when you see it's like the bitter baseball Hall of Fame voter who wants to be like the one guy that doesn't vote so-and-so in on the first ballot Hall of Fame to prove a point or whatever. I don't know who was proving points or who's just not even paying attention, but to not have one or both of those guys on the ballot is just really inexcusable.
All right, I'm doing this. Well, I know we got the John McClain, but hold on just a second. All right? I'm doing this to say 6, 12, 28. I'm trying to think of exactly how many ballots there were. 900 and something. You get 3 for first, 2 for second, 1 for third place vote. But, yeah, there were some that did not vote for one or both of them on their Heisman ballot. My question was, who was I going to put 1 or 2 if I just kind of wanted to flip a coin? That's how tight it was for me, and it was in the voting. And then the third one, I debated quite a bit. I did think about Scatterboo, made the great run late. I did think about Dylan Gabriel, his team's number 1, undefeated. He played well in the big games, and eventually decided it would be Dylan Gabriel.
The votes bored out. They could have just had those two in the Heisman ceremony, and that would have been fine. I know why you bring more guys, but in terms of the voting, there was really only 2 contenders for that trophy by the end of the season, and it was those 2 guys. But, yeah, the others deserve consideration and got to have a cool trip and be a part of the festivities and all that. But, in terms of the actual story of the Heisman Trophy race in 2024-25, it was Travis Hunter versus Ashton Genty, and to not have one or both, again, I think that's just what a slap in the face, and you don't deserve a vote that a lot of others would love to have.
When we come back, TJ Finley, by the way, West Kentucky quarterback, is headed apparently to Tulane. That's another update we didn't have from earlier today. When we come back, John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, and also a place that has a lot of great stuff you want when it comes to the dinners, the meals, and whatever fixings you're going to have when it comes to family and Christmas. They have holiday boxes available right now, a 4-piece ribeye with steak butter for $85, and you can contact them and say, I want to order this. The fall snack gift box, summer sausage, split horn cheese, jalapeno cheese, and salted crackers. The New York Strip gift box, 4 New York Strip steak with steak butter. There's the steak and lobster gift box with, 2 lobster tails with herb butter and bacon wrapped beef fillets, a couple of them. So those are gift certificates available. Choice beef tenderloin, boneless pit ham, whole smoked turkey, and prime rib, if you want those 2. At Waco Custom Marketplace, call them now. Christmas is 1 week from tomorrow. And then, of course, the New Year's holidays as well. Waco Custom Marketplace, the Bauer family, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, we're joined by Hall of Famer John McClain with us on 365 Sports. We talked about this a little bit in Craig's segment that he has called Off the Radar on Campbell from San Francisco, John, walking off the field. John Lynch, of course, furious as anyone would imagine. What has been kind of the reaction around the league or from those of you like you and others that follow the NFL?
First of all, I would like to say congratulations to Baylor. Baylor sold its ticket allotment to the Kinder's Texas Bowl today. Maybe LSU will return some Baylor fans can buy up, but that's very exciting because you guys know how fired up Baylor is about the game here and the chance of beating LSU. As far as that's kind of old news. People ask me if I'd ever heard of it. Yes. When Mike Singletary was the head coach of the 49ers, his tight end Vernon Davis walked off the field during a game. Mike went in, had a come to Jesus with him, and instead of getting rid of him, Vernon Davis came back, got his act together, and became an outstanding tight end. Now, remember Antonio Brown walked off, Vince Young walked off in Tennessee, gave his shoulder pads to a fan. But the 49ers, the fact that this guy did it earlier, not at the end of the game, and then Kyle Shanahan told the media what happened afterward. Usually teams will say, well, I'm not going to comment. We'll handle it internally. That kind of BS, but boy, the players ripped him. So I can't imagine he's going to get to play for another team. But on the other hand, somebody, and I can't remember, said running back Corey Dillon quit on the Bengals, and the Patriots signed him, and he continued a great career and helped them win a Super Bowl.
So, John, I was watching the dueling broadcast last night, and it was the Raiders game there for a little while where I heard Dan Orlovsky and Louis Riddick and or whoever it was, they were talking about the various situations going on with the upcoming draft and what teams need to do and this and that. It looks like right now it's a battle, and it could change, obviously, between the Raiders and the Giants for the number one overall pick. And I know people are enamored with Travis Hunter and what a talent he is, and I see him number one in a lot of mocks. But in particular with the Raiders and also the Giants, does Shedeur Sanders make more sense as a number one overall type of pick given their need at quarterback, in your opinion?
First of all, Craig, Travis Hunter is not going to be the first overall pick. No way. It's going to be a quarterback. And both those teams need quarterbacks. They're both desperate. I just got off a show in Las Vegas I do every week, and I felt sorry for the Raiders. They're going against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, and Sean Payton and Bo Nix. And they got Antonio Pierce and somebody. And so they have to get a quarterback. And Shedeur Sanders right now is the highest rated. But so much can change between now and the draft. At this time 2 years ago, nobody ever heard of Anthony Richardson. Nobody thought the kid should have come out. He only started 13 games his last year at Florida, and he couldn't complete, I think, 55% of his passes. So then he goes to the combine, puts on a show, and his fourth overall pick. So we can't rule out somebody doing that at the combine. Like, say, Jalen Milroe. But right now it's Shedeur Sanders 1, Cam Ward 2, and I think that Sanders is going to be rated ahead of him. So if you're the Raiders and you're desperate for quarterback, and really you're desperate for a head coach, you got Tom Brady advising the owner because he's a minor partner, they're looking at major changes there. And after watching them last night, I certainly don't blame them.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was just an interesting conversation. And I guess Orlovsky and Riddick would have actually been on the Falcons broadcast now that I'm remembering. It was just confusing going back and forth and kind of some of the same common themes and bad football in both games, plenty last night as well. But now I remember what they were talking about because they were also discussing Kirk Cousins and the situation there in Atlanta at the quarterback spot. What are your thoughts on Kirk Cousins, and do you think we're getting close to a point where that Michael Penix pick starts to make a lot more sense and we start to see him out there instead of good old Kirk Cousins?
Well, I can't believe your daddy didn't raise you to have more sense than to watch two dog games like that when you could be out watching Christmas lights.
Yeah, I know it.
Anything but those games. But Kirk Cousins, I don't know what's happened to him. Earlier in the season, when he was coming off the Achilles injury, he played a whole lot better than he's playing right now. He was terrible last night. They just beat an awful team. Everybody thinks they should play Michael Penix. Well, you know what? They see Penix every day in practice. They see him in the locker room, in the meeting room. And if they thought that he could help them overtake the Bucs, who they swept, then they would certainly do it. But right now, Kirk Cousins is terrible. Tampa's playing really well. Baker Mayfield's been great. And even though Atlanta beat him twice, I think the Bucs, looking at their schedule, they're going to win that division, and they're going to get the Falcons will get rid of Cousins on a one and done and go to Penix next year.
Is Mahomes, you think his injury, it always seemed like, and I hope it always remains this way, where he does get banged up or whatever, but it's never serious, and I hope it never is because he's wonderful to watch. And obviously with what he's done, any thoughts about that high ankle sprain and if it keeps him out of playing even this week?
David, you ought to know by now, the only thing that can hurt him is kryptonite.
Yep.
And a high ankle sprain ain't kryptonite. He had full participation in practice today. He's going to play. I remember in 2019 he had an ankle injury. When the Texans went up there, he threw 3 touchdown passes. Texans won the game. Deshaun Watson outdueled Mahomes. Texans went back up there in the division round, led 23-0, and went down the toilet at the beginning and the end of the Bill O'Brien era. But I'll tell you, Mahomes, even though they turn around and play on Christmas Day, just like the Texans do, there's no way that he is going to, as long as he can walk, he's going to play because he's Superman.
He really is.
Any thoughts on? You're right on that. He seems almost invincible a lot of the times. Even when he's hurt, he seems to be okay seconds later. But any thoughts, John, on a little off the field note? Robert Griffin III, a Baylor guy, getting a shot of those Netflix broadcasts coming up on Christmas.
Well, I'm glad to see Robert anytime he can do anything. I hated that he got laid off by ESPN. I figure next year he'll come back on Fox. It's not like he's disappeared. You know, Robert is very prominent on social media. He gets a lot of interviews. He's very opinionated. So I don't think for a minute he won't be back on, and I'm sure he'll do a terrific job on the Netflix broadcast. I can't wait for Christmas Day, even though I'll be at NRG Stadium. You know, what a day. Just like Saturday, I'll be covering the game Kansas City, watching all those college games. That may be one of the best days ever for football.
You know, the NFL owns basically every night the rest of the way. How is this going to intermix? They're starting to play games because college football opened up their door and didn't lock it, right? How do you the NFL's like most average game is still highly rated more than most any or all college games. It's pretty crazy. How will that put a dent into the games at all?
Well, absolutely. If you got Patrick Mahomes playing on TV and his star power and a one-loss Chiefs team that has the best record in the NFL. And the Texans, of course, they won their division and playing great defense. So, yes, it's going to hurt those games. But, the NFL is like the 800-pound gorilla, sits wherever it wants. And the colleges don't like that. Colleges, I'm guessing, will start earlier next year and try to avoid competing against the NFL.
All right. LSU has sold their allotment of tickets. You just said to us earlier, Baylor has. That's going to be great. That's an area that that Baylor fans have flocked to before, whether it was Illinois in 2010 or, of course, the regional final when they played Duke, and how many people were there. Your thoughts about what you expect? It seems like it's going to be one hell of a nice environment.
In 2018, when they beat Vanderbilt in a high-scoring game, but that Baylor Duke crowd, they said there were at least 40,000 Baylor fans at NRG Stadium for that game. And because Baylor fans are so fired up with the offense and the winning streak, I think it's going to be great. I go to that game every year. I like it. I don't like it like last year when the Aggies basically sent their B team because so many people opted out. And I'm glad the Nussmeier didn't go into the NFL. I didn't want Baylor to beat LSU. People say, well, they beat them with a backup quarterback. I want them to beat them fair and square.
John, we appreciate your time as always, you Hall of Famer. We appreciate it.
Guys, thank you very much. Merry Christmas and happy holidays, and I'll talk to you next week.
Well, we'll be off. We're going to be out. I'm glad you said that. We're out next week, but we'll be back the following week on the week of in fact, we might be out that day because we're going to be covering the game. So we'll have to work out another day for you, and not next week, but the week after.
Just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. There's John McClain, Hall of Famer from Baylor. Now, of course, working in the Houston area forever and ever and ever. Now, two things have popped, right, Garrett? You got both of them?
Oh, I have to reload all that. Hang on. I don't have those.
Okay, I'll just say them. Michael Vick has been hired by Norfolk State as their football coach.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. It seemingly came out of nowhere. I didn't really pick up on the story much until it started to circulate a bit yesterday, and that's definitely an interesting hire. I haven't followed him much since his playing career wrapped up and didn't know about his coaching aspirations or anything like that, but certainly a splashy hire, and he knows the area well, and I think we'll obviously have a pretty good chance of pulling in some talents who want to play for Coach Michael Vick and who know him from his playing days and what a star he was. So, yeah, that's very interesting. I saw Ross Dellinger, and I'm sure probably 100 others making the same comment, but imagine looking at college football 5 years ago and saying to people that, Deion Sanders and Bill Belichick and Eddie George and now Michael Vick are all head coaches in college football. But that's where we are now with Michael Vick joining those other three guys, and been a relatively quiet carousel, just not a lot of jobs opening up as far as head coaching positions or really big schools, but there's been enough to be incredibly interesting, and certainly Belichick and Michael Vick have been two of the main reasons why here.
All right, we mentioned a couple of players that Baylor's gotten commitment from just a minute ago. Devin Turner, he's from Northwestern, a safety out of the Big Ten, has committed to play with Baylor. I remember him because he played against Nebraska a couple of different times. This young man is a grinder. He's from Little Elm, which is where Mateer's from, right? Yep. He is a grinder. I mean, I was impressed with him. I had no idea. I didn't even realize that he was from Little Elm until just now. He picked Baylor. There were other schools involved, Missouri, TCU, among others, all Big Ten honorable mention. He is a banger as far as he will come up and hit you in the mouth. Devin Turner from Northwestern is committed, transfer to Baylor University. So there we are with that news near the end. So it's been a busy day. They've added a wide receiver, a safety, and who's the other young man that we didn't bring up? Who are the other guys? I know they've got the wide receiver from Fresno State linebacker. That's what, the linebacker out of Fresno State with that neat name of Phoenix Jackson. All right, Emery Winter, thank you very much. Garrett Ross, we will have 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 on the CW. We're back at it again tomorrow, and look forward to bringing you what we have. And those of you in the chat room, we appreciate your time. I mentioned earlier, somebody said they missed it, Genty, Hunter, and Dylan Gabriel. Those were my 3 votes for the Heisman Trophy. So there we are with that. Craig, anything else to wrap it up?
No, I think that's about it. Been a busy day.
Thank you very much for your time. Hope you have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow at 365 Sports tonight. We appreciate your time.